Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the King's Cup Invitational, and today I am joined by none other than the lovely Thanatron in this direction. and quickly, well, we'll just go over the rules once more. So obviously we've done this before. It's 3-week round robin. This is the second match of week 1. It's 5 decks, 1 ban, so it's best of 7. And each week is going to have a brand new format with a different deck building restrictions that requires the players to bring new decks every single week to really to keep them on their toes and staying engaged in the tournament, trying to be as competitive as possible, requiring quite a bit of deck building and thought put into their lineups. So the deck building restrictions for this match is no cards are allowed in multiple decks. So it's not a singleton tournament. You can run as many copies as you can normally fit into a deck, but if you put a card into a deck, you cannot run it in any other deck, even if you don't put max copies. So if you put Dragon Slayer in a Japan deck, you cannot put Dragon Slayer in a, say, Brit Japan deck as well. It can only be in one deck. And otherwise, every single card in the game is allowed. It is a classic format this week, so everything's allowed. And now let's take a look over at the leaderboards. So in case you missed the previous match for this week, it was Innocent Bubbles versus Birdo Burrito, and we saw Innocent Bubbles taking that one 4-3 in a very, very close match, taking it over Birdo in Game 7. Do you have anything to add here, Thanatron? I know you watched the match.
Some really, really great action yesterday. Anytime you have a set that goes the full length, you love it. Really coming down to some barn burners in those last few games within that match as well. So hopefully that bodes well for what we see today.
Alrighty. So, yesterday we saw Innocent Bubbles and Birdo Burrito. Today we will see our other two competitors in this tournament, Baron Von Glower and Killswitch. So let's take a look at their player cards and ignore your paragraph text down here. So, Baron Von Glower, there's a lot you can say about this man. His OCC appearances, only 3. So, out of the 4 players here, he has the least experience in a traditional tournament format. And his best OCC result is 2nd. And that's pretty good considering he's only been in 3 of them. And his overall OCC game win rate is the lowest of our 4 players at just 42%. But again, that's 42% win rate against the top players of the field is pretty good. But what makes Baron very interesting is Baron is probably, of our 4 players here, the most creative deck builder. He's the player who has probably put more hours into classic mode than anyone else in this game. So even though he might not necessarily be he might not stand up toe to toe in a traditional tournament standard format. This is not a traditional standard format tournament. So with that being said, I think Baron is going to give these players a run for his money. With his favorite nation being Japan and his favorite deck being Credit to Dial Commandos, Baron is really somebody who loves to bring wacky decks. And I know you guys are both on Team Heavy together. You're wearing your Team Heavy jersey right now. Shout out. Have you worked at all with Baron or talked to him at all about what his plans are for this tournament?
So I haven't. He has worked with a lot of the other Team Heavy guys, Corn Guy especially. So I know he is coming prepared, but not quite prepared with me. The Germany U.S. time zones don't link up so well unless you're Corn Guy. But I'd like to echo almost everything you said and just add that he's also the most handsome player in the tournament. Probably the most genius player in the tournament. I don't even remember who he's playing today because, just here for Baron, here to support, and I'm happy to see him win this entire thing probably without any losses.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll see if that is possible. If Baron can do the
Setting him up.
legendary 17-0 streak that would be required to win this tournament flawlessly. And the opponent who's going to try to stop that streak is none other than Killswitch, hailing from Turkey. So Killswitch has 6 OCC appearances. His best result is 2nd, falling just at the final line, but he's gotten there 3 times, which is quite incredible. Killswitch is an absolute monster when it comes to just consistency, playing in OCCs, getting through qualifiers, making it high on ladder. And you can see his OCC game win rate 46%, pretty low. But if you consider like the actual results he's had, that means that every single game he's winning, it might be a 2-1, but he is winning it. So, he knows how to win it where it counts. Favorite nation, Germany. Favorite deck, German, Britain. Discard, he does like himself some good control decks. But I think Killswitch, in terms of deck building strategies, is almost the exact opposite of Baron von Glower, where Baron von Glower will shy away from meta decks and always try to bring his own lineup, his own decks, his own creations, whether those are good or bad. Killswitch is sort of the opposite, where Killswitch will try to just bring the most meta decks, the most meta refined lists, and then just be better at them than other players in the tournament. So in this tournament where there's these different decks each week, different formats each week, Baron's creativity certainly shines, but Killswitch does have a substantial more tournament experience than Baron, so I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup here. And I mean, we'll get into the decks shortly, but I think it really translates their different strategies into what type of decks they brought. But do you have anything else to add about Killswitch here?
Yeah, all jokes aside, Killswitch, really fantastic player. Probably has the, like you said, tournament experience advantage on Baron and like sort of the big game experience advantage here. But I would also say that like Killswitch is a guy that will lame you out. He will use, just the best and most brutal decks. He's not in a tournament to necessarily entertain or have fun. He's in a tournament to crush, and that's great. Like I love those kinds of players, and we'll see how it lines up today. Exactly what you said against sort of his the yin to his yang in Baron creativity von Glower.
Yeah, I do think, yeah, you make an excellent point there with Killswitch really just the coming here to crush. I don't think Killswitch is. I think Killswitch was probably taking this tournament more seriously than any other player here. I think he's absolutely here to win. And my first experience playing against Killswitch in a tournament, it was in a best of 5 top 16 of an open. And Killswitch, I went up 2-0 against Killswitch. I thought I had the series in the bag, and Killswitch just clawed his way back in, won with his 3 remaining decks to take it 3-2. And I mean, I have a ton of respect for anybody who's able to do that. It's really hard to mount that type of comeback. And I think that really shows that he might be very well prepared for this tournament, where it is best of 7. I mean, he's shown that resilience.
Yeah.
But now, we've done a lot of talking about things they've done in the past. Let's start talking about things they're doing now. So let's start taking a look at the decks, starting with the decks of Baron von Glower. So, here we go. Here is his first deck, USA, Japan. I mean, what's going on in this deck, Thanatron?
This deck rules. Obviously, if you're going to bring, your US deck with the restrictions that we have in this tournament, right? That's where you're going to see your Shermans. There's not really any point to save those for anything else. So you're probably going to go with some sort of like frontline shell. Extremely valuable card and basically worthless to you in this format in any other deck that's not US. So I like to see that, and then combining it with some fifth rangers that have left the game, or at least left ladder, Red Devils, and even like Bicycle Boys and the TKs allow you to go extremely fast, right? So this is like a race car version of Frontline. This is the F1 of Frontline, and if you go first, like if you just roll going first, like good luck.
Yeah, this deck has the potential to win on turn 3. And that's included through guards. Like, this deck has an absolute ton of aggressive potential. But then you also see that single copy of Production Order, which is really interesting and kind of terrified. If you're playing against a deck like we saw from Birdo Burrito yesterday, where you're playing these Scorched Earths and you maybe not a ton of healing, this deck's going to have a ton of early game burst potential. Then if you drop the Scorched Earth, you're just simply reducing the cost for this B24D off of Production Order, which might come in handy. The other thing I will say about this deck is we saw, I believe it was Innocent Bubbles not even bringing a US deck, and then Birdo Burrito bringing a US deck that looked completely different than this one. We haven't really seen Frontline yet in this format. So a lot of these players, at least the previous players, not really thinking that Frontline was necessarily that good in the classic format. And Baron von Glower completely disagreeing with that, although not doing it in the traditional format, but also maybe saving those German ally cards for other decks. So now taking a look at his second deck, this is an absolute Baron von Glower classic. It is the Firewall unitless US Britain deck. I've lost to this a ton. I'm sure you have lost a ton against this deck in scrims. But basically, the idea of this deck is you ramp up, you stall down the opponent with cards like Monty, Naval Power. You use Escort Group to cycle in the 8 damage orders into your deck, and then you eventually just draw into them in combination with the Sea Patrols. Maybe you can get a Commonwealth off if you're against something a little bit slower, and then the Firewalls just absolutely shut certain decks out of the game, because if you require the front line to attack, 4 units in the front line with Firewall, that means you have 1 spot left to attack your opponent for the rest of the game, and that's going to be pinned, and that's not going to be able to get through fortifications, etc. So this deck is incredibly powerful. What do you have to say about this deck?
We'll see if the game that his frontline deck might run a 4-minute game, and this deck might run a 40-minute game. So really going to get the full spectrum here. You can see the tail end of that deck list not only being thick, but having a lot of reserved shields, the shelling, triple Lend-Lease Commonwealth combo. That really classic Brit shell to any kind of veteran player. And yeah, like you said, against certain decks, those 4 firewalls, thank God they've been outlawed for normal play. And then just Monty, just to see that, smug face again, brings back tons of memories. But yeah, this deck might make you not move for 40 minutes. So good luck to everyone in the tournament that has to not get tilted by that.
We might see this deck being banned, because yesterday we saw 2 out of 3 British decks being banned. Nobody wants to play against Monty. Every deck with Monty and Shellen got banned yesterday. We'll see pretty shortly whether that is the case again here. Now his third deck. This is another Baron von Glower classic. This one a bit more meta, perhaps, than the previous 2 we've looked at. This is a Japan-German discard list with a sort of air unit sub-theme. You see a single copy of Burst of Fire in there, the air superiorities. This deck was one of the best decks in the game a few expansions ago, then it hit some nerfs, and then it hit some rotations. But Baron has never stopped loving this deck, and it's a really fun take on discard. Discard is more traditionally played as a very, very slow, grinding control deck that doesn't put on a lot of pressure and then eventually wins with 1 or 2 units because the opponent is just simply out of resources. This takes things a bit more aggressively. It's able to build its own board and force the opponent to respond, force them to play out answers, and then you discard the rest of those answers. And it's a bit more proactive, and honestly, that's probably the reason why this was one of the best decks of the game, whereas other discard decks have been more on the fringe. But do you think sort of post-nerfs that this deck is still as good or potentially even better than it used to be, or do you think it's sort of taken a step back?
It'll be really tough to say. Aichi is a real bastard of a card, so seeing those 2 back, those are always really hard to deal with. And then this deck having access to the kind of AoE that Root Out provides, and that still being around, I think is really great. And then, as you said, just all these different pieces of discard to get through, these huge units. And it'll be really interesting to see how the new Wolfpack works with this deck, right? Obviously, that Wolfpack is not the Wolfpack from when this deck was relevant. It is now something that sends something back to hand and then discards, right? So it'll be really interesting to see because, as you said, this deck taking its own board control. New Wolfpack kind of provides not only some discard but some tempo. So it'll be really interesting to see if, maybe it's even better now because not only am I'm sending your guard back, hitting you in the face, and discarding, and maybe discarding that guard. Who knows? So it could be some really zany stuff.
There's also some very fun combinations that I've been discovering recently with Takasagi with the new salvage mechanic. There's a lot of situations where you will just salvage your own Takasagi to be able to play it again. And once it's salvaged, like if you play Takasagi on the Ascent, you get a 1/1 Takasagi, you play it, you out of the mist it, trigger a second discard, play it again, out of the mist it again, trigger a third discard. Takasagi being able to fit into this deck is absolutely disgusting. Same with the Root Outs. These are cards that didn't cross paths with this deck originally in Standard. So this deck, again, I'm looking at all of these decks and it's like, man, I want to ban this. Do I want to die on turn 3 to US? Do I want to die on turn 25 to Britain? Like that. Yeah, nobody loves playing against Baron. except perhaps Baron himself. And here is, I mean, maybe the most quintessential Baron deck out of all of them. Because Baron is just sort of bringing his highlights, his best decks he's created here. But this is, of course, the Siberian Transfer OTK deck. And essentially, the concept of the OTK is you play Great Patriotic War, you play Siberian Transfer to get a 5/5 Blitz tank, you play Ura, you play some final pushes, you hit something, and the Ura is going to transfer that damage straight into the opponent's HQ. There's also a Katyusha, which can help with the burst. There's Aerial Reconnaissance to reduce the cost of some of these cards, Observer Core to reduce Great Patriotic War, and then everything else in this deck is just stall, heal, and removal. And, I mean, I'm sure you have played against this deck dozens of times. I've played against this deck dozens of times. It's very powerful, but how do you think it stands up to the more recent push? Because we saw Siberian Transfer got sort of forced out of the game through rotation, and then push came along, and push has sort of taken up the mantle of the great Soviet OTK deck. Do you think this is better than push with the tools it has access to?
I don't. Like just head to head, probably not. But I do think that this is a far more fun deck to play, and obviously this deck is like basically Baron's soul. So it makes a ton of sense to see it here today. And there are strange plays that can make this deck better in certain situations. Obviously, the two Uras loom super, super large. And, this deck probably has maybe some more versatility in like how it can sort of pull off its OTK than I think Push does. Push is maybe more consistent, but also more hemmed in, if that makes sense. So, I mean, it's not like there's no viable tournament reason to bring this. It's not like he's just bringing it to, play his favorite thing because he doesn't get a chance to elsewhere. There's definitely merit, and it'll be super interesting um, just to see what it goes with. And as you said, I want to ban every deck Baron has. So
Yeah. And I mean, with these mobile defenses and Uras, you can sometimes just end this game without Great Patriotic War. Like if your opponent's just sitting back and playing something very order heavy, and you can just, you play mobile defense, they ignore it because they don't have units on board, and then suddenly just Katyusha, Ura, face, face, face. You don't need Great Patriotic War. It can be discarded. It can be overdrawn. So it's a bit more resilient than Push in that way. You also don't have to rely on your health total being at a certain number, like you do with Push. So I've seen this deck win on one health before. So yeah, there's certainly advantages to this deck, and then just being in the classic format, you get access to 3 copies of Scorched Earth, which might be my least favorite card that has ever existed in this game. And I mean, in terms of the deck building perspective, it's simply just replacing Snowstorm, but it's so much more powerful than Snowstorm. And then there's also those 2 spy rings in there for just extra value. Sometimes you just win with nukes. Um, yeah, this deck is incredibly scary. And then last but not least, we've seen sort of the OTK deck, we've seen the discard, we've seen the long, grindy unitless, we've seen the YOLO aggro, and now we've come full circle back to a second all-in YOLO aggro deck. It is another deck that Baron loves to play. It is with 5/54ths, the 0 cost, 0 op Blitz unit, and 4 copies of Iron from the North to just try to get as much into the front line as quickly as possible, and then end the game with Blitzkrieg on turn 3 or turn 4 if you can. I mean, if you're in this lineup, and we've seen in this tournament so far a bunch of different control decks, people playing these slower strategies using some powerful combos later in the game. If you look at this, do you just simply ban this because you don't want to die on turn 3? You want to actually be able to play your decks?
I don't think so. I think that there's more threats, right? I think when you look at a deck like this and you look at it in the context of what we have here today, this big set, I think it's really easy to be like, all right, if he plays that deck 3 or 4 times, it's gonna win once. Like it's gonna pop off. Like the planets are gonna align, and all that tech is gonna come out, and I am gonna lose once. But it also shouldn't be hard to beat that deck with the vast variety that you're bringing, right? So there's definitely gonna be some bad matchups into that. There's probably also really some great matchups into that. So it still might behoove Killswitch to sort of ban one of the more outlier thick decks that Baron has brought that might be harder for him to bring. I think we'll get a lot more insight right when we look at Killswitch's lineup. But you make a great point. There's definitely Like killswitch is a control player. If he went control heavy, maybe this is the one that he shuts out. He's just like, I have like 4 control decks, and this is going to be the thing that goes under them, like without a doubt. So get it out of the way. But I could also see some situations where he's just like, he'll get a win with it eventually, but like it's not going to be hard for me to handle it at least once.
Yeah. Yeah, it is definitely a deck that sometimes just simply loses to itself. But what Killswitch will have to answer this? Well, let's take a look at that right now. So here we see the first of Killswitch's 5 lists, and I think as we are about to see, Killswitch has definitely leaned away from. I mean, Baron has brought 5 decks that he has created in the past that have since been rotated out. These are 5 of his favorite decks. Killswitch has done sort of the exact opposite and brought 5 sort of meta decks that have existed in the past have been rotated out. So that's gonna be an interesting battle. But the first of those decks we see here is Britain USA Air, and I mean, there's not a lot of USA cards in here. We don't see sort of those big, heavy-hitting USA cards we've seen from the new expansion, like the fire bombs. Not even running the newly changed for Freedom or Bomber Mafias, but instead is just going to the old reliable Greyhounds, P-38 Lightnings, and the A-20 Havocs, a more bomber-focused build of air than what we might usually see, and that's going to work great with those 2 Empire Strikes. And now he's fitting in the Lend-Leases as well as the Convoys for just maximum draw potential. This deck is just going to be trying to build board after board of sticky air units and slowly burn out the opponent. How do you feel about not running sort of the more recent cards like the Bomber Mafias? Do you think that just going back to the tried and true with Monties and Shellings and Empire Strikes is actually just simply better than what we've been forced somewhat to switch to?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Also, he has those 2 Empire Strikes, right? And as you said, bomber heavy Empire Strikes. So like the AoE portion of Empire, or I'm sorry, of Bomber Mafia, he can probably get more than that AoE at cheaper and better value. And then as far as just those big bombers, like they're certainly good, but his whole point is to already have big airboards by the time he'd be able to play that sucker, right? So I do like what he has going here. I used to love, this is probably my favorite iteration of Brit Air through all the years. I just love the lightning and the just extreme, it's just really super basic synergy, right? But it's fun to play with. Doesn't take any brain power to just be like, lightning, all the planes do more now. But like it's just it feels good. And also interesting here, we'll have to see what Killswitch picked for a US deck, right? But let's say if he did think about going with any kind of frontline based, he didn't really use any of those US units up except for the Greyhounds. And there's so many 1 drops when you have the classic pool that still affords you within this rule set to play a really, really hefty frontline, right? You still have Red Devils and then even things like Scout Car that have come out more recently, right? And then the 1-1 Destruction Infantry, whose number on the unit escapes me. 101st?
Oh,
I can't remember.
164th.
160 for okay. But yeah, so really, really cool deck. Just because you're gonna get all that power of the same Brit Air shell that has always destroyed, and then you get some really nice buff potential from some of those US cards without touching your US pool for other decks, which I think is really valuable. We probably have not spoken enough about the format, right? Of just the keeping cards out from other things, and just like you can probably expect Killswitch won't play US ramp because like if you played US ramp, you'd probably play it with Britain and you'd want a lot of the stall. So like it'll be really interesting to see what he's going to do with that US deck.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We saw our players yesterday, Birdo Burrito and Innocent Bubbles. They brought 2 nation. They both of them brought 2 decks from the same nation. With Innocent Bubbles ignoring US and Birdo Burrito ignoring Soviets. Both of our players here today, Baron and Killswitch, have both brought 1 deck from every single nation, taking a very different approach to this format. But now let's take a look at Killswitch's second deck, and he said his favorite deck was German Britain Discard, and here he's actually brought it, German Britain Discard. He's the only player who actually brought his favorite deck. And I mean, you have a lot of the classics, the MI5s, just sort of, and the British stall package, the Glamour Boys, the C4s, to add on to the normal German discard that we saw a bit of in Baron's Japan German discard list. But you also have some of the newer cards. This isn't simply just a copy of an old deck. Those 3 Jaeger regiments in there are going to help massively in competing with much more aggressive decks, and we see 2 very aggressive decks from Baron. Those Jaegers are going to be a huge help in that matchup, as well as, I mean, the root out that has been obviously rotated, but that's going to help, as well as the 3 copies of Supply Shortage. I mean, if you're Baron, do you just simply ban this deck because it has discard for your OTK potential, and it has supply shortages and Jaegers for your aggro potential? This seems like the deck that just sort of absolutely counters everything Baron's brought here today.
Yeah, I think that he just is like, nah, you don't get to play your favorite. There's only one Monsoon Rot, but you kind of are like, oh, only one Monsoon Rot, and then you remember that he was able to take 2 root outs, so it's like, oh, Jesus. So just tons of board clear potential, as you said. And again, just credit to Killswitch's understanding of the format. Able to kind of divvy up some really powerful Britain packages and insert them. Here's where he sees his Seaforths and his supply shortage monsoon combo and his Glamour Boys, right? Glamour Boys kind of coming later than this deck. This deck never really played Glamour Boys. Mostly, this deck kind of had left the meta, I believe, by the time Glamour Boys came around. So seeing those with Seaforths on a 4/5 is stupid. Um, it's ridiculous to try to solve through. So yeah, I probably agree with you. Baron can't go under this, I don't think, with his fast decks, and I don't think he can reliably OTK around all of the discards. So I would say that the big brain Baron play of the day would be, yeah, probably banning this. We'll have to see what else Killswitch has.
Alrighty, well, let's see what else Killswitch has.
Ooh,
He has Jagro, and this is a mono Jagro deck. It's
yeah.
technically Japan Soviet, but there is not a single Soviet card in there. This is 39 Japanese cards. And this is honestly a very surprising to me because Killswitch is somebody who loves playing meta decks, and he loved playing Feigned Retreat when Feigned Retreat was in the meta, and he's not running Errado in his discard deck, so he could have just even run um, I mean, 37 Japanese cards, including Feigned Retreat, and then 2 Erratos, but instead he's leaning into the 4 expansions, and running all Japanese units is going to make those expansions much more reliable card draw. And then otherwise, we just see Japan has 39 incredibly powerful cards in the Jagro deck. Like, you don't really need ally cards necessarily. Like, yes, 35T is powerful. Yes, Befelswagen is powerful, but look at this deck. What bad card is there in this deck? What card is in this deck now that has never been run in meta Jagro decks before? I mean, the answer is there isn't any. Every single card in here has been run in a meta #1 Jagro deck before in different metas, and he's just chosen to put all of them together and ignore the ally cards. And I mean, how do you think it's going to work out for him? This is a very interesting build of Jagro, obviously. A ton of 1 drops.
Yeah, so that was gonna be my first point. If you notice, there's 2 columns here, right? And the column on the left is all 1 drops except for the commit the reserve, which is new removal that Jagro can use very efficiently. And then, of course, you go right into those Ichis, which are ridiculous. And then again, a reserved card of the Dina. So like you're able to really draw right back into those 1 drops, including again with all of your expansion. This is like the 1 drop all stars, right? This is like every good 1 drop Jagger has ever had through like a 5 year period all together. And it's just so fast. There's definitely decks that could hard counter this, but I don't really know that we saw any from Baron, right? Like playing this into something that had supply shortage would just be like, oh, okay, well, I'm probably I'm probably done here. But there wasn't necessarily maybe Baron has 2 root outs in the deck that he has German with, but like this is going to build some really cheap, really efficient, really terrifying, frightening boards, and it'll be interesting to see if Baron can deal with it. 1 naval supply run as well for that like extra big burst. And then, of course, Desperate and Bombing Raid, you have the 5 burn from hand as well. So really, really tough.
Yeah, I mean, You said that Baron might not necessarily have any decks to deal with this, and certainly not. I mean, he has some stall tools, but how do you stall against so much aggression? I
Hmm.
think like the Soviet deck is probably the best thing. And that raises the question: does Killswitch ban the Soviet deck? Um, just because of the power of this? But just looking over this deck list, it does strike me that this deck list has much less draw than a normal Jaeger list because he doesn't have the Jaeger regiments, he doesn't have the 20 seconds, he doesn't have Martyr, he doesn't have a Rado into Feigned Retreat. German Ally actually supplies a shockingly large amount of card draw. Now, he's certainly going to be able to go through several boards with the recons, the expansions, the Dina, the AA gun, all of these cards draw cards, but I mean, it's substantially less card draw than Jaguar, so this is going to be a bit more vulnerable to just one or two big AoEs. And maybe the Japan deck is capable of doing that. Not anything else. Like the Soviet deck can stall them out with Scorched Earth, and the Japan deck has Root Out. But otherwise, Baron might be a bit more vulnerable to this much more aggressive strategy. Maybe the British deck, but I mean, the British deck has heal, has firewalls, but does it have enough to stop all of this? I remain unconvinced, but we will have to see.
If you were if you were committed to this idea that we see before us and you were going to bring this idea, would you find feigned, like find a way to sneak feigned in here? Or do you think that like the four expansions, because as you said, just the complete how having of the draw, not like having, sorry, I can't speak. It's only like half of the draw that you would have because you lose all that German sided draw. So like, do you think that it would always be the right call to sneak in feign for something like a single recon or
Yeah,
I don't know. You could make your cut choice anywhere, right? Low curve or high curve.
I mean that's a very good point. You don't necessarily need to run like a what we saw from Innocent Bubbles yesterday with two erratas, two orders in the deck. You can just put Feigned into the deck, and sometimes you draw it on turn 6, and sometimes you don't. But at no point turn 6 and afterwards are you sad when you draw Feigned Retreat because it's just going to
It's
be
still
I
very
get the rest
order
of my
light.
deck. Yeah,
Right. I guess with the expansions, it's kind of not. The four expansions are going to make that more complicated. But otherwise, right, you have the two elite Japanese orders and you have your honorable and commit, and you only have one of each. So it'll be really interesting. Maybe, like I said, he'll have expansions in his hand and Feigned would muck that up and it would never be too clean. But I would almost. Fame just seems so powerful. Like if you're gonna commit to bringing Jagger, even if it is like all Japan Jagger, I'm just not quite sure how you. Not to criticize Killswitch, he's a much better deck builder than me, but I guess I just love Fame too much, is what I'm getting at.
yeah, yeah. It is definitely hard to say no to Feigned, but I mean, we
Hmm.
did see Feigned from Innocent Bubbles fall to Bodo Burrito's Japan France Resistance Mill deck, and that was entirely because of Feigned Retreat. If Bubbles had not played Feigned Retreat, I think there was a chance he might have still been able to come back and win that game. So maybe Killswitch saw that game happen and said, "I would rather have more power over the amount of cards I draw rather than all or nothing." Um, but he still has two other decks to look at. So the first one of those two remaining decks is US Frontline, and this is where all of those German cards we have not seen in the previous decks have made their way into here, with 3 copies of Panzer 35T, 2 copies of Martyr, 2 copies of Blitzkrieg, 2 copies of Wirbelwind, and then just the US Frontline package. We have the Rangers, we have the Shermans, and then for the choice of one drop, because there was a ton of choice for US one drop, he has the 164th 4 of, and the 4 of 32nd Infantry, the good old Chocolate Boys, which is going to guarantee a several unit board over and over and over. The Combat Engineers and the Red Devils are very, very powerful cards to get into the front. Well, not to very will help create very powerful front lines where the Blitzkrieg will then let them finish. And in terms of new cards, it's fairly short on new cards. You have the two M10s and the two Devil's Brigade, which is a newer card, but you're not seeing cards like the Panzer Grenadiers, and again, none of those Bomber Mafias, none of those Fire Bombs. So what do you think of this choice? Is this the best way to build classic frontline, or is Killswitch sort of feeling more comfortable on decks that more closely resemble things he has put hundreds of hours in previous metas?
Yeah, no, I really like this. We kind of alluded to this in the beginning, right, where he had the three Greyhounds in his air deck, and we kind of said, he can lose those to the air deck and still has a plethora of one drops if he chooses to go with frontline. And here we see that, and I think that that's going to work out for him really well. The M10s and just providing a little bit of suppression for this deck, I think, are fantastic. You will know that or notice that he did not go with any half tracks. Neither did Baron as well, right? So we're really focused on the suppression and not necessarily the tempo or of sending guards back. We'd rather just take guard off of them. And I think that that's probably the right call. Uh, Warblewinds are great. I'm happy to see those back, but obviously Baron not bringing any air decks. It'll line up into his Japan pretty well. You know, we saw some light air units in the Japan deck that the Whirlwind could be a real problem for, but otherwise, it's not a problem. Yeah, not a negative, right? Whirlwind is a 2/3 blitzer for one op, so like it's great. The text is wonderful, but just the body itself, works really well, especially in a speedy deck like this. So this thing can definitely hang. Interesting to not go with any stars and stripes, just with the one strategic bombing. So, he hopes to be fast and not necessarily need that kind of board flip potential. And I think that that's probably the right call as well. So,
Yeah, that's a very
like you said, the
interesting. That's a very interesting difference between building a deck for when you're playing like a best of seven versus a best of three, where you in a best of three, you're probably pretty confident your opponent's going to have, say, an air deck, and if you're confident your opponent's going to have an air deck and you're not going to ban it, that's one of their two decks is going to be great with a Stars and Stripes is going to be great against it. But in a situation where it's one of their four decks that's not banned, and the other three Stars and Stripes might not be that good into, it really changes the way you normally build decks.
yeah, absolutely. And some of these German draw, it's interesting to not see the classic draw boys. We have the two martyr, but we don't have the 22nd, and I'm not sure that we know he didn't have them in this Jaguar, right? Because that was all Japanese. So I'm not sure that we saw that anywhere, which is a very classic card for these aggro decks to maintain that draw advantage. So he's hoping to pull it off with just martyrs and the Shermans. Also the German Sherman, I could definitely see one getting fit in here as well, and I don't believe that Killswitch has used any of those yet. So that's another powerful card he's sort of foregoing in all of his choices. Which again, I definitely don't think is wrong, but will be very interesting, right? Those
Yeah,
are
in
some
this
beefy
case, like
boys he doesn't have.
if you're looking at sort of like the heavier end of a frontline deck, you have the four Shermans, which is a must-have. And here he's picking the fifth Rangers over stuff like the German Sherman, and I think that's actually a good call because fifth Rangers is a much higher tempo card. If it's coming down on turn 4, turn 5 with another unit, um, it's just much faster than the German Sherman. It comes down on 5 with no ramp in the deck, and then it doesn't even do anything when you play it on 5. Now, obviously, it's really, really good value, but it clearly, with the way he has built this deck, Killswitch is leaning more heavily into the tempo. And now, let's take a look at Killswitch's final deck. It is Soviet Italy Control. Killswitch absolutely loves this deck. And I mean, I remember playing like a Soviet Italy Control mirror against Killswitch in an OCC finals once. That was one of my favorite matches I've ever played. And it went to fatigue, and he knows how to play it. He knows how to play the mirror, he knows how to play this deck in and out, and you just see all of the big Soviet value tools put into this deck. I mean, just absolutely powerful elites, like the first rifles and the 39th rifles. Those cards are completely broken. And then you have, of course, reserve cards like Partisans, which can do a big tempo swing. And then you have all of the newer AoEs. Look at the amount of AoEs in this deck. You have Naval Engagement, destroy the entire support line. ISU, destroy all damaged units. Strategic Focus, 5 damage to all air units or ground units. And then you have he's actually not, I just noticed, he's not running any copies of Depths of Winter. What do you think about this change? Where you can't say he doesn't have AoEs. But no Depths of Winter in a Soviet value deck.
Yeah, it is really interesting. He has the two Winter Warfares as well. One of those probably clearly for ISU, and then one of them just for the early game advantage of having a Winter Warfare. Uh, but with two Winter Warfares, obviously you don't need to combo that after Winter. I'm sorry, yeah, Winter Offensive, but it's certainly handy. Winter Offensive just good on its own. The three Alpinis is interesting. Those have really fallen out in a world where the oh god,
The
I'm thinking Red Devils
Devil's
now
Brigade.
and not Devil's Brigade. Thank you. Exists and just takes those off the board for 3 immediately. Also interesting that we have the 2 lines for the day, and we have both attack and the colonies choosing to go for some health, like extra health, because we obviously have the fiats as well. But the new Italian removal, the dagger card is extremely efficient and great removal that I would have maybe loved to see one of in here. Maybe for one of those attack in the colonies, providing a much better removal option than just 3 damage and then only foregoing 3 health. Maybe providing a little bit more versatility, but the health is definitely not bad, and trying to scrape out health with just the engineers and the fiats can definitely be tough. So I also am a enthusiast of all Soviet Italy controls. So happy to see this. And I mean, free to play players, you look away, put your hands in your pockets, don't look at all those gold flags.
Yeah,
That's a
just
rich man's deck.
looking down particularly in the rightmost column, just all of those gold
Yeah.
ones down the side of that deck. That is one expensive
And if they're
deck.
not gold, they're silver, except for those help needs, which is wild.
Now, let's take a look at the total lineups, and we have the bans, so I will reveal them now. We have Killswitch's German Britain discard being banned. I don't think that's particularly surprising. It felt incredibly powerful into
Mhm.
4 out of 5 of Baron's decks, at least. And then on Baron's side, he's going to have the Siberian OTK deck banned. So I think this might be both players' favorite decks being banned. And
That's
that
true.
might be part of it. That might just be the mental
It's
game
just
of
head
just,
games.
yeah, ban what you know your opponent is most comfortable on, um, what decks that they want to be playing. So I'm going to get spectator mode set up here, get the players into their games, but what goes through a player's mind when you have 4 decks? Your opponent has 4 decks. Do you just pick one at random, or is there some sort of strategy here, in terms of what deck they bring first?
I definitely think you probably go in with a little bit of strategy, right? It's really nice in a long series to be working from ahead. So, like, getting that first win certainly doesn't signify like, oh, you're gonna win this set, but it's really like a nice base to work from, kind of get that early confidence up. So, I would say that both of these players, I would expect to sort of take a look at which of their in a situation like this, it's probably which of your decks has the least poor matchups. And that's probably the one that you're going to want to rock with first and sort of try to establish your base and sort of your control in the set. It'll be really interesting. This is sort of like a not like a marathon set, but traditionally longer than what an OCC set would be or a normal tournament set. And then obviously with all the restrictions, so super excited. We'll see what these guys have for us. I am very interested in Killswitch banning the Siberian OTK. Like you said, maybe it was just a mental thing, just like a mind game. But I do wonder. So both of our players, right? Killswitch is either like aggro or control. There's not really any mid range in his game today. And then Baron is sort of aggro or OTK. Both players, even though they brought 5 decks, like archetype wise, are kind of lean and mean. So see
Yeah,
what happens.
I mean, I think I banning the Soviet deck. At first it's like, well, how good is, Siberian OTK? But honestly, at the end of the day, looking at Killswitch's lineup, it has 3 Scorched Earths, and that's great against Jagro, great against Frontline, great against Air, and then it has great Patriotic War OTK, no matter what your health total is, which is amazing against Soviet Italy. So it really just comes down to it's banned to discard, and your discard deck is probably getting banned. So I think the ban makes a lot of sense. And here we see game one is going to be US Frontline versus the Brit USA unitless deck. I mean, here Baron is just looking for firewalls, because if you can get 4 firewalls off against US Frontline, the game's essentially as good as over.
Yeah, this is going to be a miserable experience for one of these players. It's either going to be a miserable experience for Baron as he quickly gets trounced and can't find what he needs, or it's going to be a miserable experience for Killswitch as he can't seem to affect the game with his frontline units that are stuck.
I mean,
And
I've
could
played a
really
lot of
make Chocolate Boys bad here as well.
yeah. I mean, yeah, with Baron doesn't really play any board clears because you don't. The board clears have negative synergy with Firewall, so these Struggle Boys, if they come out, they're just 2/1 bodies that are going to be on the board for basically the rest of the game. And do you really want a 2/1 body? And instead, he says no. He's just going to go for the 35T, put the pressure on. I really like this call from him. Here, I'd love to see the 99th just come out, put on
Yeah, I
continued
think
pressure.
the buff potential there again is going to be great with what Baron has. I don't. This is wild. I'm already waiting just for torture. Escort groups, are going to sort of be the big win con here. You stall everything out, and then those escort groups spend a lot of time in deck and come out as huge damage bombs.
Yeah, we see that armament's being shuffled in, and I mean, if you look at Baron's hand right now, no card draw, nothing that remotely contests the board, nothing that wins the game in any capacity, and he shuffles in a 8 damage order into his deck rather than say the card draw. But that is just how you play this deck. You just have to hope and trust in the deck's ability to draw into the cards that you need. And top deck Shelly, that's exactly what you want to see. You take no
Yeah,
damage
because
this turn and eat the credit slot.
Killswitch prepared to do 11 damage next turn out of the required 13 with that Hellcat and all of that big stuff in the front line having 0 op cost. So, really great start here for kind of how Killswitch has this built. Of course, going back a credit as well, shelling a true asshole of a card.
I feel like that's exactly how to describe Baron and his playstyle. Is just plays all the asshole cards, and every single game, I swear, Baron loves when only one player has fun. Like that is his goal in playing cards.
Yeah, I can't disagree as someone who's been on the receiving end of him trying to perfect that.
Yeah, but here it seems like he's the one not having fun. I mean, he can actually kill both the Fifth Rangers and the Sherman, but that will leave his hand with 10 healing, and that's not enough to get into Commonwealth range, and none of those draw cards. And
This is a
like
pickle, and
he runs 3 Lend-Lease he can draw, but is top deck Lend-Lease even really enough to get back into the game? Because Killswitch might just go for a Hellcat here and push 7 damage
yeah,
face.
put him on lethal. Sherman also a good play just to maintain some card advantage, and you want those big 4/4 bodies. This is not the game where you want to, like we said, kind of clog up your board with small units. But then again, Baron would have to actually find a firewall for that to be relevant. So
Yeah, and at this point, with so few cards in hand, Firewall would be a great draw for Baron, but it's not the draw he actually needs at this point. It's essentially just Lend-Lease off the top or bust. Um, with the Hellcat coming out, this means Monty would not draw a card. And there we see Monty actually top decked. Likely just going to see the naval power fortification. Hope Monty can draw on the following turn.
truly, Baron not really having choices in his play right now.
And I mean, this is the risk of bringing this type of deck. Is there's some matchups where this deck is really good into. There's some players who might not know how to play into this deck properly, but when you're playing against competitive players playing competitive decks, I mean, these decks just some of these combo decks from Baron just simply don't have the win percentages that you might want them to have and might find in other against other opponents.
Killswitch really taking this in and thinking here. Perhaps thinking about even playing around Monty, but I can't imagine that it's worth it.
Yeah, I love
No,
this. Just
yeah,
push
we
up the
just
fifth
go
Rangers.
going big.
He needs a Lend-Lease.
Dreaming about smashing him with that 35T. Drawing into draw.
Oh,
Oh, the game back to being afoot, perhaps.
and this is why Monty is gone. Just Monty top deck, Monty to draw Lend-Lease, and suddenly he's just. I mean, he has all of the card draw he wants, but actually, not a ton of stall. Like he's still staring down lethal on the following turn.
His mass pin is gone, right? That's Monty and Shelling. He was lucky enough to find them early, but he was unlucky enough to absolutely need them early. So,
Yeah, unless this convoy draws a double firewall, um, and then even then you're dead to a blitzkrieg coming over from killswitch, and obviously we see killswitch doesn't have blitzkrieg. Baron does not know that, and
Even a scorched earth would still allow for 2 attacks next turn.
yep, we see what he draws. Pioneer Company, and he wishes it was the old Pioneer Company that would reduce the cost of all 5 of these orders, but it's only going to reduce the cost of the first one. It's more card draw, more ramp, nothing that affects the board. Sincerely Yours will potentially keep him alive a little bit longer in combination with potentially another stall piece. Fix up the
Oh,
second firewall, but he can only play 1.
yeah, truly wishing for the. And he throws up the Cheerio.
He knows he's dead to Blitzkrieg, but unless Killswitch top decks it, this shouldn't be lethal. Yeah, there's no way to kill him this turn. He can get pretty close. He can absolutely get very close, and Baron's definitely not pulling off a Commonwealth this game. This is there's definitely healing left in the deck to stay off of Death's Door, but just he doesn't have the credit sheet. And I think a big part of this is this deck was a lot better with old Pioneer. This Pioneer was the former Pioneer. I would say that this game is still like maybe 60-40 for Killswitch, but he just simply doesn't have access to the credits he needs.
Yeah, imagine even if he was able to just save 1 extra credit last turn and get the double firewall off, let alone if he was able to save 4 or 5 credits because his turn is just orders. Killswitch forgoes an extra damage through the engineers.
And he gets the
Could have
M10
had
down
him
to
at
deny
2,
a
but
credit.
really wouldn't matter. And yeah, that's a really good play. Baron probably not getting out of this, but denying that credit.
Yep, he finds the 8
Just
damage armaments and lays it
armaments
on himself.
himself.
You gotta respect that. And there we go. That is game 1. And going the way of Killswitch. Do you think this is sort of a sign of what's to come, or do you think this is just sort of a rough matchup? Maybe Baron's weaker deck.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, that's probably Baron's weakest deck, right? Baron's got 2 really strong aggro decks, really fast aggro decks outside of that, and then of course he has his kind of beefy Japan German, which could get into a really, really fun control battle with some of Killswitch's big control decks. So I really think he's just gonna have to try to find his best option for that Brit win. It'll be really interesting now to see if he pivots, right? Does he kind of recognize that Brit win is going to be the hardest one to get, and he has to get it in order to win the series, so we might as well line it up against each deck until we get it and then move on? Or is he going to maybe try to work around it here and maybe try to get it into a better matchup? Because obviously Killswitch is not about to play his worst deck into it now, so...
Yeah. And I mean, with the way the format works, it is about game wins, not simply set wins. So Baron shouldn't just simply run his worst deck. If he thinks he can't win with this deck, he should still try to win with the other 3, and at least lessen the amount of points he's going to lose.
Yep. It's a great point for the table.
But now I think it is time to start doing a giveaway. So guys, exclamation mark giveaway in the chat to enter the giveaway. I know it was previously broken at the beginning of the stream. It is fixed now, so if you typed it at the beginning of the stream and didn't get a message saying that you joined, you did not join, so you should do it again. There's 27 of you currently entered, and if you won yesterday, you can still enter again. No, don't worry about that. But yeah, let's draw 2 entrants here. So the first entrant is Francio. So congratulations, you have won 150 gold, I believe. And this applies to everybody. When you win the giveaway, I will be DMing you on Twitch after the stream, so don't expect it right away, and make sure Twitch Whispers is on to ensure that you can get access to the codes. I need to be able to send them to you. And let's draw a second one. And it is Bear Gardener himself. So shout out to Bear Gardener. And that is we'll end the giveaways for now. Of course, there will be more after every match. Um, and I'll let the players know that they can head into game two. So, I mean, kill switch at this point. I mean, you're off to a win. You must feel good. You played against a deck that you probably have zero experience against, and that must suck, especially for a player like Killswitch, where he values experience so much. He probably hates having to play against something that's just so wildly non-meta as Baron von Blow's lineup. But that first win is probably going to give him some confidence, where it's going to let him know there's a reason certain decks were meta and certain decks weren't meta, and that's because certain decks win more than other ones. Do you think he's just going to keep up that tempo, bring one of his more aggressive decks, the Jaguar or the Air, or do you think it's time to switch over to that Soviet control, throw Baron for a loop?
I think Killswitch is going to sort of counterpunch here. I think that he looks at Baron, looks at his lineup and kind of Baron's understanding of the game and says he's probably not coming back with the British deck because of there's no reason why I would play a good matchup into the British deck. So if he's going to switch, I probably should also. Well, I mean, he has to switch ready one with the. But I think that he will anticipate the move off of the British deck that we've seen here. Now we have the Japan mirror.
Yeah, and apologies, guys. I will switch it. OBS really loves just switching the feeds around, um, which which is a good time. So now we have Kill Switch on top and Baron on the bottom. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
so the 1-0. Yep, there we go.
yeah. So although they're both playing Japan, these are two very different Japan decks. So on Kill
Yeah,
Switch's
one
side,
fast and one not.
yeah, this is non-feigned Jagro, and that's. I mean, we saw non-feigned Jagro from Bodo Burrito. We saw feigned Jagro from Innocent Bubbles, both taking wins. I mean, Jagro's just Jagro, you know? It's difficult to build 5 decks that can beat Jagro, as well as do well against other lineups. And, I mean, we see the root out already in the hand of Baron. This is definitely the card he wants to see. What he does not want to see is 2 copies of this 24th Cavalry Regiment.
Yeah, as well as as we said, there's an army of 1-drops in this deck for Kill Switch, and Dina coming out on turn 3 to block the bombers as well as draw additional 1-drops. Really, really nice stuff that you just don't get nowadays. Really like Dina. I miss Dina.
I I will not be with you on that one. I do not miss Dina. But that's just because Dina, I swear, always finds my opponents exactly what they need. If they need removal, it finds them double type 94. If they need bird, it finds them signal regiment. And when I play Dina, it always just finds me the worst unit available. But I mean, we'll see what kill switches Dina finds, but he might not play it next turn because it will put him up to 9 cards. So
Yeah.
he probably doesn't want to just accept an overdraw like that. On the other hand, I mean, what, you play down your own Aichi, but then Baron immediately answers back by hitting it, and then, I mean, you keep around the 3-2, obviously, but you don't want to just lose the body that quickly. And a Key 83 pickup, that can be incredibly powerful against Baron's deck, just looking at his hand right now.
Yeah, a lot of decisions here. Kill Switch pretty much has to go Aichi, right? Like you're obviously not buffing one unit. You're obviously not salvaging your own unit. The burn can't be afforded yet. Wouldn't really make much sense. You don't want to draw from Dina or from expansion due to how many cards you have in hand, and KI-83 also cannot be afforded yet. So I mean, I really don't see any other option but Aichi and move up.
Yeah, I mean, with the amount of 1-drops he has in deck, he could probably just push expansion and just pray to get a 1-drop, but that's... I choose probably a
And
bit more tempo, and he goes for the Dina. He just says, you know what, you can overdraw me, but you will not get to get any more value out with his Aichi. Find a turn 4 play. Baron picks up the Schutzen, decides he would rather keep that secret, and instead just pushes up the 39th.
And to your point, it would have worked, right? He did draw a Cav, so he could have gone with the expansion and managed to have a little bit more of a board with no overdraw. But the blocking ability of the fighter, definitely relevant, definitely very helpful.
And just looking at the hands of the players, this seems just a very awkward situation for both players to play in. Um, just Aichi being on the board just makes Killswitch have to think about every single play he goes for. He's got to be thinking about stuff like bombing raid placement. Um, but on Baron's side, it just feels like looking at your opponent's hand size. It's so huge. Your cards cost so much, and you're still at full health. You still technically have control of the front line even. But it just feels like there's not a lot you can do.
It
See,
might feel even worse if he knew what some of those cards were, like KI-83 and some nice removal tools.
Killswitch is going to hit the Aichi, and this does mean he's going to overdraw again. This is not typically what happens. Jagro overdrawing on turns 4 and 5 against discard. But that's just the way that this game has worked out so far. And it's actually good that he hasn't just, say, for example, just pushed a 15th Cavalry to the front line with that last credit. It would mean he doesn't overdraw a card, but Winter Regiment pickup would have made Baron's turn incredibly easy. Just simply play Winter Regiment, get value, move on to the next turn. But here, you don't really want to uncover your Aichi because it means it's going to die, but you also, for example, well, maybe you can just play Shiden, but you see the single surprise attack in your opponent's hand, and if they have a second type 94, suddenly that's a huge tempo swing.
Yeah, I still think maybe you move something up to the front line. Okay, so he chooses to do that with the 3-1. Gonna definitely lose his bomber here. Audacity is a rough overdraw for Killswitch.
Yeah, that would be easily one of the best cards in his deck at this point, especially seeing these 5 health units in the hand of Baron. But, I mean, even though he's overdrawn twice and overdrawn Audacity, I'd rather be in Killswitch's position here than Baron's. Things are just very awkward. And I feel like Jagro can just close out this game incredibly quickly. Even if they do nothing from turns 1 to 5, sometimes they just get to turn 6 and then they play 6 1-drops and you lose. I'm sure
Once the floodgates open, Killswitch is going to burst. It's going to, flood the board is going to be a very real term.
And on the flip side, Baron has the root out to answer just a wide board of small units, and he has the Winter Regiment and the Schutzen to answer a larger unit or a single unit in the front line, and both of those are incredibly efficient plays, and he's still on full health, and he's able to fully clear the board here if he wants.
And the AA gun, obviously, you kind of can't. Well, I mean, he could destroy the other one, right? But then the bomber, you want to get. He doesn't know this, right? But the thing that can stand up to the root out the most is that KI-83. He doesn't know that it's in Killswitch's hand, but it's such a threat that he would love to get the AA gun, but with all the sort of indirect fire, the non-return damage from the artillery and the bomber, he just can't do it. Of course, next turn he's going to be in annihilation range, which could also be quite helpful if Killswitch chooses to. But again, his hand's just too wide. He can't really KI-83 anyway. He doesn't really have a point to, so it's not going to set up well for Baron.
Had Baron gone for the root out there, it would have also overdrawn Killswitch another card. So we see he goes for wide with these cavalries, which can both just be picked off for free, but that's going to be 3 more credits Killswitch is spending not on units, not on damage to the HQ. And Baron is just trying to bait more onto the board with this root out. He's just trying to bait more smaller units onto the board. Killswitch can use the cavalry and the artillery to take out the units in the front line, and then use 4 credits to play key. And Baron has the annihilation to immediately remove it, but that will leave 2 big units on the board for Killswitch going into turn 7 if he goes for that line. He's instead going for this line where he takes out both units. This is going to bring out the root out almost certainly from Baron.
Killswitch, such a good player, definitely knows to play around it, especially in an open deckless format. Maybe feels that he's not really losing that much here. He's obviously going to draw, but he's really only losing 2 real units, or I guess 3 with the cav.
And it's also going to hit
it is
another
kind
overdraw.
of a painful.
He's still on 8 cards in hand. He just has the most awkward
Unable
hand
to
ever.
bail.
The On the Ascent Naval Supply run, bombing run key. He's just drew the entire top end of his deck, and it's just sitting in hand. As Baron just.
And of course, Baron in one of the most age-old cards feels bad situations, which is where you have the intel on both of the surprise attacks. You know that they played both types, that you can see them both in your hand, and you're just like, "What? My coolest unit is done for unless I get something out in front of it that seems worth killing."
But Baron will likely go for this AA gun, and that's going to lock down the key from coming out this turn unless he Killswitch surprise attacks the key, hits the expansion, and then overdraws the bicycle.
How's
That
the
is
bike?
not the order of cards you want in there.
And maybe this is just when Killswitch finally gets rid of this bombing raid. Obviously he knows that, Baron's not going to be flooding the deck with this, or I'm sorry, flooding a board with this deck here. So kills a unit, gets a little bit of face damage, which as Jagro, getting that 3 damage start is certainly helpful and can maybe shave a turn off the game.
I really like this on the Ascent here. Baron has several larger fighters in the deck, like the FWs and even like a Kika.
That's a great point.
So getting this AA gun back on your own side, and he goes for the key, and this is just going to simply give Baron an incredibly easy Annihilation turn. I mean, he doesn't even need to go for the Annihilation, because if he leaves key on board for a turn, Killswitch overdraws again. Suddenly, Baron is his discard deck is turning into a mill deck. On the other hand, this is going to be the easiest Annihilation turn ever. You're under no other pressure. So yeah, I do think going for the Annihilation here is the correct call. Hits a surprise attack, and still no Blitz units. These 2 expansions. This is brutal. Baron has played more Blitz Japanese units than Killswitch has this game. 3-1.
Yeah, all 4 of his. Actually, he has 1/24th cav left in hand. Also, his own key. He can get his own key 45 out behind the guard, which could also be a real ugly situation for Killswitch. Of course, putting down the AA guns that have been so prevalent here, cycling themselves, providing that coverage to just not let your opponent deploy such powerful air units without, having to take such a huge debuff.
And we see some of those powerful air units in Baron's hand. He can't answer this AA gun at all, other than, like, I guess, sheet and double attack, but that's terrible. But he's not really under any pressure. He's double Takasagi. This is going to absolutely eat through your opponent's resources, both to remove them and then with the discard effect. And if Killswitch ever gets the front line, it just shoots in Winter Regiment for 24th cav.
But even as Baron would love to see some stuff in the front line, as you said, because he's got some value on some big blitz infantry right in the back. But does he just move up these 2 big 2/6s and says, I know that you don't like the cards that you have. Let's see you draw now. But of course, Killswitch able to get the buff wagon up, and
here comes the one.
Here we go. Now the train's rolling.
And there's no AoE in Baron's hand, but this Winter Regiment essentially just acts as an AoE against these 1-drops because, you get Yokosuka Cav to the front line, Winter Regiment comes down, kills 1, and then for 1 credit you can kill the other with the salvaged 1/1 Blitzer.
At no op cost as well, so just super value.
Yeah, just 6 credits, 2 for 1 your opponent, and generate
and
the 4.
Probably taking out the buff line. Oh, so we covered this a little bit. Now, obviously, those Yokosuka could be, dealing 3 damage after the salvage, but the Winter Regiment wouldn't survive. So perhaps he takes the buff wagon here.
He can take out the Type 93 with one of the Takasagis, and then go for the Winter Regiment play. So he can take out the entire front line at essentially no cost, but it's not answering this AA gun, which is going to stick around as a 3-2 in the support line.
Yeah, I'm sure that's definitely annoying for him, but it's really not providing a huge threat quite yet. Again, though, as we've noted, 3 big planes now in Baron's hand.
Yeah, this is... I mean, Killswitch is sort of just simply lacking a way to win this game at the moment. Like, even if he, picks up the Signal Regiment and starts just trying to burn out Baron, most of his hand's going to get discarded, and Baron just simply has the island defense. And here, Takasagi's getting pushed up.
Again now, you've got some small units, and they've got to go into some hefty units, and then you hope to get the front line back to be able to draw back into the game. But if I've got my hefty units there, how is that, going to happen? That discarding of the single surprise attack, huge.
Yeah, he would
That
love
kind
that
of
surprise
targeted
attack too.
removal, yeah, that kind of targeted removal on any of these big health units would be a huge help to kill switch.
And from Killswitch's perspective, if you're simply looking at what cards you have and what cards your opponent has on board, there's definitely some good plays you could make. You could get some good value. You can trade this out while building a couple units of your own. But the problem is Baron doesn't just have the cards on board. He also has a 6-card hand, and Killswitch has a 3-card hand, 2 of which are going to be discarded.
Yeah, I wonder if he almost bails his hand out here to not suffer these discards. Like if he pins the Winter Regiment and then uses the AoE to only suffer losing a buff wagon. He's actually going to do what we kind of went over there, but putting the buff wagon down first. So truly going to lose nothing. Probably next turn can play out his hand and then destroy the guard as well, kind of dodging that discard.
I absolutely love this play from Killswitch. I think he really found the best. He navigated through that turn perfectly. And it's played to his outs. Like, it still looks like he's absolutely going to lose this game, but, Barons went from 20 health to 9 pretty quickly. And Island defense does not heal 10 anymore. Um, it's down to just 6, so.
Yeah, now that the Artie is so big at 5-2, you almost wonder if he just Kikas into it. Because, obviously the Kika goes down to 1 health and that feels bad, but the thing does so much damn damage anyway, it's just gonna be a near. Oh, of
Oh!
course, you could just draw that and it won't matter at all. Okay, bye.
Oh, and the expansion pickup
Oh, and an
is just
expansion. Oh my
terrible.
god.
It's
Salt in the
over.
wounds, a
It's over.
TK
You just
early.
surrender at 18, man.
Yeah,
The Dragon Slayer would be
Dragon
nice if it
Slayer
could just
helpful, but
immediately get traded out.
yeah. So rough for Kill Switch, but maybe perhaps a great set starting here as we are destined for 1-1.
Oh, and the worst part of that is it wasn't even just simply top deck Desperate Measures or draw to Desperate Measures in any other capacity. It was Island defense into Desperate Measures. So now there's not even the hope of like a get some chip damage in with a signal and top deck Sheeden before your opponent can end the game. There's just zero hope for Kill Switch in this situation. And he
And
recognizes
truly,
that.
you can tell why the Type 94s were rotated, why they were so annoying, why they were so big and so important, giving you, targeted removal that only costs 4, but like that cost of 4 is spread out and gets you 2 1-1s. Like so much of that game hinged on getting that discard of that, piece of 2-cost targeted removal. Really felt like that was such a huge play. I guess all I'm saying is I'm rambling. I'm glad to see Type 94 gone. So glad.
Yeah, Type 94 was just a card that offers so much potential in just a single 1-drop. And oh man, imagine it with the Blitz Doctrine meta. You're coming down as 2/2s or 3/3s. That would have been terrible. So unfortunately, we dodged that bullet.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately for Killswitch, his surprise attacks did not dodge the discard bullet. So that's Baron taking the win, tying up the set at 1 apiece, and that's Baron's most tested meta deck getting a win. So this is it's not necessarily downhill from here. This isn't necessarily Baron's best deck, but it's certainly Baron's most tested deck. So from here he has the 2 very very aggressive decks, and then that British deck that I guess you want to get that
So
into the Soviets.
right. So I would say that Baron is going to want to come with either of the non-British decks and try to either just out value or out aggro Jagro or go under Brit Air as best you can. And then, like you said, hope to set up that all important OTK into control matchup. But Killswitch, knowing that, maybe he just plays control now, right? Very unlikely for Baron to come with the British deck at this juncture, I would say. So if Killswitch comes right now with his Soviet deck, his big control deck, and is able to avoid the OTK deck and secure a win, then that puts Baron in a spot in this set where he has to find an OTK versus Jagro or OTK versus Air win, which both just don't sound very feasible.
Yeah,
So
that's
is Baron then aware of all of that and thinking that Killswitch's biggest, most intelligent power play is to come with the control deck right now, right here? So then he counterpunches the counterpunch and then brings the OTK deck. You can see all the people in our lovely audience how when you are faced with these kind of situations in a tournament and you have a good, 5 minutes, less than good 2 minutes to like make that choice, how quickly it can just spiral in your head to, it makes sense for him to do this, so I should do this, but he knows that, so he should do this. But then I know that he's doing that, so I should do this, and then who knows where you end up.
I believe it's Berto Burrito once told me that whenever he's in these situations, he literally just like flips a coin. It's like at the end of the day, with the amount of psychology, reverse psychology going around, at the end of the day, it's completely random. So you might as well flip a coin and feel less bad about it if you get it wrong, rather than if you try to think you're out thinking your opponent, you're outsmarting them, and then you get it wrong. Now you feel like you are somehow could have done some things differently. Whereas if you just flip a coin, it's RNG. Who knows what's going to happen? Um, but while we're
Depends on if you're a gambling man, I suppose.
while we're just getting things going here, let's do two more giveaway draws. So exclamation mark giveaway in the chat to enter. Um, and we have Ferrao Rodrigo. So congratulations, you've won 150 gold, which will be sent to you in the form of a giveaway code following the stream. And a fourth giveaway alongside him will go to Akstar. So AKST4R Akstar. You will also be getting a giveaway after this stream. But let's tell the players to get into game 3.
This is going to be really interesting. Like we are sort of at the fulcrum of this set, and I think that what is about to happen in just the deck selection alone going into this game could, completely decide this set, and how this sort of plays out.
And here we
And
see
we are going
it's
to see, yeah,
Jagro
U.S.
versus
frontline
US
into
Japan.
Jagro. And this is fast frontline, right? And the only way that Jagro really has like the power to beat frontline is if it can go faster, because frontline is a little more sturdy, a little more beefy on the back end. So Jagro kind of has to get out in front in the race. But this is a really fast Jagro build that Baron is coming with. So this will be really interesting. Jagro going first is huge.
Yeah, we see he has the 15th Cavalry, so he's setting back Sheetan for sure. I think what Killswitch is thinking about right here is whether or not to keep the Signal Regiment. And he actually chooses to send back a Cavalry Regiment, which I
Yeah,
imagine
that's very interesting.
I imagine that's got to be based around just how many one drops in the deck. Maybe trying
Hmm.
to avoid just simply getting picked off by 164th. Find this
Full stack of
Aichi.
164ths, yeah.
And we see Baron keeping the Duress, and that's not going to come into an immediate effect right now. But when this Aichi comes out on turn 2, they can get hit bans by half tracks maybe moving forward. Oh, Kill Switch actually being offered here, a very interesting decision.
I'm gonna take the draw rather than placing the bomber out. With the amount of one drops he has, I kind of love Aichi on turn 2. It's just such a strong play. Uh, Baron lacking a second one drop to make the 164th really kind of worth it here. That turn doesn't feel good. Baron going second, holding Shermans without blitzers,
Yeah, but
kill switch fast, drawing, mobile, moving.
he's Baron does have some of the beefier side of his deck here, so as long as he can keep Kill Switch off just a critical mass of one drops that will just blow Baron out of the game, if he can get into those 5th Rangers turns, things can start looking very good, and he drops the Duress early. I don't really like this from Baron. I think there's not really a point to playing it on the Signal Regiment this turn. I mean, you're not really expecting any units to die here with no 35 Ts to trade off. So maybe you should have just kept it around, because we see this Aichi in Killswitch's hand, and I think Baron's gonna start wishing he could duress the Aichi pretty quickly here.
Yeah, really interesting call. You can say that if Baron is able to take advantage of this game and take the front line and draw from his Sherman, it could really spell the end for Killswitch. I definitely agree with what you said, but what the duressing of that does do is put that 0-4 just worthless in your back lane, which can, definitely clog you up if Baron's able to take the front line. Baron is a great play here, right? About to make a 4-4 half track and put it in the front line, I would assume. Could
Uh,
also just send the Aichi back
yeah, the
and make
alternative
a
is get a
3-3 half track.
3-3 and a 2-2 half track on board. Don't love this positioning by him because it is potentially walking into a bombing raid. It's guaranteeing bombing raid can remove both units after the 164th. And he also
Even
hits
with
it. Well, I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
no bombing raid from Killswitch, so even though he loses the 50-50, that would have given Killswitch the best possible bombing raid. Um, Instead, on the Ascent pickup, not good for Killswitch. This is the issue with on the Ascent and Jagro. If it if you get Signal Regiment down before on the Ascent, your on the Ascent becomes essentially a dead draw. So Killswitch, this board looks incredibly scary. These Type 94s are going to start swinging face for 4, or, well, 2 each. But his hand
So
size is
mobile.
getting small. But on the flip side, Baron's hand size is similarly getting small and is getting starved for resources because he doesn't have this front line. The Sherman and the 99th neither of them get their useful effect here.
And that bomber being able to just not take any of that return damage as these little units clog the front line is going to make for some injured US units that are just begging to be bombed, essentially. Not what Baron wants.
Looks like
I'd
Baron's
like
just
to
going to
see
trade out
him.
the units.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think this is where you for freedom, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I think you do need to
there's a
kill
world where you for
both.
freedom and draw another 164th, and suddenly things look amazing. But if that for freedom hits anything other than like a blitz one cost unit, that it suddenly sucks. And here, expansion pickup's good. There's not an amazing card to put into the front line, um, but most likely this Type 93 will come up to trigger the effect. He could also just simply trade off the 5th Rangers, push a Signal Regiment up if he wants to play very slowly, but that is not how Jagro is played. Killswitch is just going to trade out, build another board, and this is looking pretty much like lights out for Baron.
Yeah, and combat engineers is going to be way behind the ball. Just gonna put him out because they're cheap, get his draw. Red Devil's not too bad here. I mean, certainly worse things that he could draw. I
Yeah, it's.
feel, man, a really tough decision here. Do you take the buffs away or do you just get rid of the TK early?
I think you got to go for the attack. You need to get as much value out of your
Yeah.
units as possible here. Try to keep as many on board.
And
You can't afford to play
I
around bombing rate or desperate measures at this point.
and he has to play this 99th, I think, because the whole thing here is an attempt at getting at least one of those 3 infantry on the front line this turn. This is basically his only chance at the game, and he knows that.
And here, I would love to see Killswitch use the Out of the Mist and the Aichi attack to steal the 99th and buff this Type 94. Because he doesn't have a super active hand. The On the Ascent completely useless. The Shiden can't really do much this turn. He could just try to pressure Killswitch out, play Shiden, and bring Killswitch can try to pressure Baron out, and that's exactly what he's going for. He brings Baron to
Yeah,
8,
face.
says you could take the front line, but can you deal with Shiden killing you next turn?
Yeah, have fun drawing. I'm kind of past that point. That's what and that's gonna be rough. I mean, there's nothing to happen here. There's no
Duress
mobility.
pickup could remove the Fury and maybe buy a turn, but that's not going to happen, and that is going to be Killswitch taking a very fast Game 3 to regain his lead in this series.
Whoever went first in that game had such an advantage. Killswitch able to capitalize on it with not the best Jagro hand, but mono Jagro coming through.
Certainly a better Jagro hand than his previous matchup against the discard. So, when you're Jagro, you don't need the best hand. You just simply need a hand that has 1-drops sometimes. So here we see Killswitch getting through with his Japan, and that leaves him with Brit USA Air and Soviet Italy control. And I don't want to say these are his weaker two decks, but out of the four decks that he had after the ban phase, it feels like Frontline and Jaguar were certainly more comfortable wins at the very least. It feels like they're just sort of decks that, they're aggressive, they're tempo based, and they're simply just going to get a relatively easy win. Whereas the other decks feel like it's going to probably be more hard fought at the very least. At least that's my perspective on the deck list. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I would say that I agree. I'm just really thinking about like the layers here, right? I really feel that this set hinges on Baron finding the OTK into Soviet control matchup. I think that that is the only way that he can pull the set off. So it's interesting here just because whatever deck Kill Switch comes with, like maybe this is where Baron is just like I'm playing the Brit deck. If you beat it with air, then at least I get the matchup I want, and I can go try to beat your control deck 3 straight times with matchups that aren't the worst, I suppose. But then if let's say he doesn't go that he goes with his US or his German deck and Kill Switch comes with that Soviet deck and gets a win, I think the series is over regardless of what could happen after that. So um I did not expect the Japanese mirror last time when I was sort of describing how I felt a lot of the set hinged on the deck picks in that one. I think it's going to be kind of just as relevant now. As you said, it's not all about winning the set, right? It is about trying to win as many games as you can, which is not something that is common to a cards player. It's usually just a set is the only thing that matters, right? Maybe in like a Swiss pool and stuff like that for like tiebreaker purposes, like in the long run. But I feel like a cards player mostly is thinking about just like how to win the set, not necessarily how to do the best they can in the set, regardless of the win or the loss. So we'll see who chooses what and how it lines up.
Yeah, I mean we have seen Baron at this point play three different decks. So he's switching around. He's clearly not just trying to stubbornly get one deck through no matter what. Um, all right, and it looks like we're going to be taking a brief break to allow our players, get some food, get some stacks. This is going to be a long series. So in the meantime, if you're Baron here, like if he had gotten the win, say he had gotten just a very fast start, got an early win, he would have had so much momentum on his side. You drop down early, but then you get that solid win against Jagger with a bad hand, and you win on like turn 4, turn 5. Things would have been absolutely in his favor, and I think that's probably what he was going for, bringing this very aggressive U.S. Japan deck. But now that he's back on the back foot, and seeing that Soviet deck, there's a 50% chance that Soviet Italy deck is coming out, and you have to beat it. You have to get your Britain deck into that if you are going to win with your Britain deck. If you're Barrett at this point, are you already resigned to the idea that you are not winning this set, and instead you're just focused on trying to get as many deck wins as possible? Or do you think Baron is still in it? And if so, how do you? I mean, what is he going to break? Does it just go in with the German deck and pray?
So my tournament set brain here has like only one choice, and it's to bring Britain. If you beat my Britain deck with air, I don't care. Like obviously, I'm hoping that you're like I'm doing this to guard against not finding my matchup. And then if I don't find my matchup and you beat me with air, then I know that I have the OTK matchup that I need. And then I also know that I have a US deck that's very fast that can go under your control. Maybe not consistently, as there's a ton of health in that deck, but like it can, right? It can. And then I have a German deck that is Femboy Heinz, right? Which also can hopefully go under the control. So I feel that that's kind of the only way forward. But again, he has to get a win with all of these. So if he wins this, then still sort of in the same situation. At some point, what I'm talking about comes down to him winning 3 games against the Soviet deck. So it's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and he's going to try to start it here in Game 4, bringing that German Soviet just all in Iron from the North aggro start up against Kill Switch's Soviet Italy control. Here we can actually see the mulligan here from killswitch, keeping engineers and armored train, and that is exactly what you want. And look at that, the triple Soviet elite start, 3 Soviet elites with a guard and 1 Soviet elite with smokescreen heal. Is that not Soviet control in a nutshell?
Baron's gonna get some iron from the north money here, though. We'll
Oh,
see how he chooses to
just go
spend it.
Panzer A fast tides. I feel like this is the best fast tides you're going to get this game. And if you were going to play the Panzer A, you needed to push iron from the north first. So if this isn't a
Right.
fast times, I'm shocked that there's no fast times coming out here from Baron von Glower.
Yeah, I would have moved up one. I would have cashed in my money, and then yeah, done the same here. He can definitely do it now and get the martyr on board as well, right?
Yeah, iron from the north, martyr, fast times, and he's actually on track to just with that, and he pushes the Panzer A rather than attacking. He's setting up turn 4 lethal, and Killswitch currently has nothing in his hand to stop it because these elites
Right.
just don't come down fast enough.
Train can't come down to on turn 5, and he would have needed to find another unit, and he again does
He
not take
might
his
still be able
money.
to do it with iron from the north. If Fiat comes down here, it's going to be
Wants to
Blitzkrieg
maybe do it
9,
and
10,
trying to
it's
do it all in one turn.
18 damage, I believe. If my math is correct here, with iron from the north going up to 6 credits, fast times 5, push, push, Blitzkrieg, and is he not playing the does he not realize fast times is support line only? Did he miscount the credits, maybe? Did I forget what? Oh, it's frontline only. Why was I thinking of support line only? Okay,
Yeah, when you
Baron knows
said
how to play
support
this
line
deck
only,
better
I
than
was
I
like,
do,
what are you talking
and
about?
it's exact lethal. It is exact lethal. Baron actually knows. I can just simply wins on turn 4. It looked like Killswitch had the perfect hand, but just absolute demolition coming out from that deck.
And it had to be that turn, right? Because that was turn 4, turn 5. Killswitch had a giant armored train that Baron would have had to saw through. He had the engineers, so as the train is producing tokens, those are producing health, and of course the Fiat ready to grab some of that health back as well. If that would have been an 18 out of 20 Blitzkrieg, there's a good chance that Killswitch can claw that game back, right? Like that had to be 20 out of 20 on turn 4. Baron loves that deck. He's going to be so stoked that it did exactly what he needed it to do there. That is the definition of going under a big heavy control.
And I mean, like if you look at what Baron drew, it wasn't necessarily like the nuts. It's not like he had the zero cost iron from the north, 35T pull double beef wagon. Like it was just he played a 1-drop, he played a second 1-drop, he played 1 iron from the north and a 3-drop, and then fast iron Blitzkrieg. Like that's a normal hand, and it won him the game on turn 4 against Soviet control. And just yeah, if that game could have gone differently so easily if Killswitch just simply had a Bryansk regiment. If that Fiat came out on turn 2 rather than on turn 4, it would have reduced the Courson down to come out on turn 4, rather than being 5 cost stuck in hand. Just things could have gone so differently, but they didn't, and that's why Baron plays these types of decks. Is it just goes under players, and not just goes under their decks in terms of the curve, but it gets under their skin. Because if you're Killswitch now, you felt 2-1, I have a lead. His 3 remaining decks, I don't think they're that good. I think I have a great solid lineup. I think I have a good shot at winning this series 4-1, and then you just lose on turn 4. You felt good about your hand too, probably, and then just dead on turn 4. And the series is tied back 2-2, and that's just gotta be frustrating. And you're now entering best of 3 territory, where you each have 2 decks left, and one of you has to win with 2 of them.
And again, the way that this lines up, right? Like the U.S. front line can go fast and beat air, and then OTK can get into, that control. So it could line up really well for Baron after seemingly lining up so poorly.
Yeah, and everybody watching right now, I do realize I forgot to do the giveaway after the last round. So that was a very short one. So let's do a few giveaways, and we're over halfway through the tournament, so it's time to crack out the big giveaway. So let's start with what do you think? 2? Let's start with 2 small giveaways, and then let's hit them with the big giveaway. So with the smaller normal sized giveaway, we have Von Malachowski. So congratulations, Von Malachowski, and we have Mr. Balls 23. Um, uh, and now for the big giveaway, 300 golds. That's practically an officer pack. Exclamation mark giveaway to enter. We are going to draw Berlinoid. So Berlinoid, congratulations. Again, everybody will be getting that at the end. But in the meantime, I will notify the players that they can get into Game 5. And at this point, with both players being 2-2, I think. Do you think either player expected necessarily to like lose this series heading into it? Either just who they're playing against based on lineups like that. Because at this point, 2-2 with the scoring system, that's at worst a -2 for whoever loses this, and if they can get another win in, then it's only a -1. That's quite similar as we saw from the Birdo bubble set. Nobody's getting blown out here. There's no 4-0s.
Right.
But do you think both of these players expected to win?
Yeah, I think both of these are really confident players, that are definitely like Baron might bring some stuff that people may think is more like wacky or out there, but like not only does he understand playing it at a higher level than most, he also I think understands that like there's something to be said for the lack of experience that your opponent has, right? Because it doesn't matter how good they are, you're obviously going to be better with your 100 reps against frontline than your 10 reps against Siberian OTK. Especially as well, since Siberian OTK is, or, the Firewall deck, both of those being largely non-meta after rotation, just kind of getting all of their tools pushed back into rotation. Can't really play those decks anymore, so you have to be even more lacking, I guess, in current reps and experience against those things.
And just oh no, things are looking rough for Killswitch. You have to pin the Bicycle Regiment, right?
Well, I think in his head maybe he's thinking that 3 damage and 4 damage, there's not that much of a difference, so maybe I'll take my kill, but this 99th is going to come down and make that choice miserable.
Does Baron just simply put 10 to the HQ? Do you care about this? Okay, he's choosing to take this slightly more responsible line. That is going to walk
instead
into
of the
second Albacore. But what is Killswitch isn't setting up any way to kill this? I mean, short of Monty top deck, because the Type 93 is going to come out, the Albacore dies, a second Bicycle Regiment comes out, and I guess he just has to Empire Strike. Like, his Empire Strikes clears out the Bicycle, clears out both Bicycles and the Type 93 and the 164th, and then, I mean, your opponent is still left with 11 to 12 damage in the front line.
And holding on that half track for your next plane, and of course,
Monty
Montoya.
off the top into a good Monty HMS, and then Empire Strikes.
And sorry, he even throws out the sorry old chap. Good lord.
Oh, the double Bicycle start with the 99th. Things looking absolutely unlosable for Baron, and just Monty top deck, and it's just
and draws cast just in case.
I mean, even Fifth Rangers actually gives him an opportunity here, because if Killswitch doesn't sequence this correctly, Empire Strikes can come down, and its 4 credits deal 3 damage to all enemies. Killswitch pushes Fifth Rangers, it's 4, so it survives the Empire Strikes, and obviously it can die, but he instead just goes for the half track and just has to pray. He doesn't just... In Baron's mind, he doesn't have Empire Strikes. If he has Empire Strikes, they lose anyways. And we know Killswitch does have Empire Strikes, so this Swordfish is just going to come down, followed by the Empire Strikes. But there is a world where if Killswitch just plays Empire Strikes and then tries to attack, like if he just does a weird sequencing here, this Bicycle Regiment could survive with the buff from the 164th, but he's not going to do that. He clears all the units at the same time, and... man, it also reduces the Wellington cost. There's the P-38 Lightning. Fifth Rangers is big, but not big enough.
Yeah, I don't see... It's going to take some very well-timed Sherman draws, but And by that I mean you'd have to top deck one, but it's not even gonna live, is it? I don't even think it's gonna live.
Yeah, there's not even going to be units to draw with Sherman. You need two draws here, basically. Um, and there's no card in his deck that lets him draw two other than Sherman. And this is,
He can literally just go swordfish, cast, attack, attack. Only
yeah,
then throw a gray hound in the front line just for the spacing. But instead, here chooses to just make two giant bombers and barons. Like, yeah, goodbye.
yeah. And that two very rapid games in closest session. One going for Baron, one going against Baron. It looked like Baron was about to high roll his way to two wins in a row. But the Monty top deck, and I mean, I said I wasn't as convinced in air, but I mean, this is why Monty got banned. Banned twice in the previous match with Innocent Bubbles versus Burrito. Neither of them wanted to see that. And today, I mean, we've seen Monty just getting some absolutely disgusting plays out here. And now Killswitch is up 3-2 with just Soviet Italy left.
Yeah, and Baron now knows that he has to win against Soviet Italy. He does have the matchup that he knows that he needed if he wanted a chance to win the set, but we have talked sort of at length about how the score of the set matters just as much, and this is a long-term round robin where the scoring matters a lot more than just necessarily the match win. So this is really going to be about which deck he thinks has a better chance to beat Soviet Italy. Um, Knowing that if I can claw out one more point, and even if I can't pull this off, losing 4-5 is better than losing 3-5. But also, it is Soviet Italy. It can draw bad. You can just win.
Yeah, and let's do one more giveaway, and then jump into Game 6. This could be our last game of the match if Killswitch is able to take this win with Soviet Italy, but it does mean Baron has the guaranteed Britain-US into Soviet Italy matchup that he was likely looking for. So, this very easily could go to Game 7. But for now, let's draw another winner for the giveaway, and it is Conflict of Nations WW15. So congratulations, you have won 150 gold. And now let's let the players know to head into Game 6. And here, if Killswitch wins this, he's in the lead. He's just fully, flatly in the lead in this round robin after the week 1. If this can go to Game 7, it means that we will have a two-way tie for first and a two-way tie at the bottom. We will have our front runners. And here we are seeing that Britain-US. So Baron very clearly is thinking that Britain-US has a higher likelihood of winning than his US-Japan, which I agree with completely. And it looks like he is going to be getting the turn 2 or the turn 3 daylight bombing going first, and that's exactly what you want to see.
Yeah, that's pretty sick nasty. He is going to be thankful for that.
And over on Killswitch's side of the board, you see he's trying to think. So it's possible to heal out of the British deck's range. It's not easy, but it is possible. There's no Great Patriotic War, so there's no guaranteed lethal from Baron's point of view. But Baron only runs Pioneer Regiment as his only unit, so these 7th Alpinis, they can only damage HQ as a form of healing, which means it's 2 turns to get there, and if a firewall comes out, they're not healing anything, and that's Baron's primary means of healing. That and Engineer Regiment, but that requires Baron to be killing Killswitch's units, and Baron doesn't really run much removal and will likely be focused on putting all of his orders into Killswitch's HQ to try to burn him out as quickly as possible.
This is a really interesting match, as they all have been so far. Obviously, everything riding on this one.
The red banner is going to be useful to get around Firewall on one unit, depending on what Firewall comes out on here. But it looks like Killswitch is going to be doing a Bryansk into Petlyakov curve here, and I don't think Baron's going to Firewall a Petlyakov, and actually that curve will be thrown off by the turn 3 daylight bombing, so it's going to be Bryansk into Bryansk. In fact, you might not even want to play Bryansk because it literally doesn't do anything. It is actively
I was going to say, 2 Bryansks on the board is, Could be not great for kill switch. He's going to clog his backline, and he can't move him up against a firewall deck. He knows if he moves them up, they're going to get firewalled to just take a slot away from the board.
Yeah. And, I mean, even if he moves them up, he doesn't need to play Firewall because they don't deal damage, and Killswitch doesn't have a way of making them deal damage other than
Yeah, and he's
destroying
not
it into
Baron's
red
not going to
banner.
kill him.
Yep. Baron thinks about this a bit. It's not a question of which card he's playing, it's a question of where it goes, and it goes into the HQ. Engineer's picked up, but how many units can you destroy? Red Banner gives him 2 healing with that, but, what else? Now here, we see the Royal Research in the hand of Baron. Obviously, it's Killswitch's turn, but what he does on this turn is likely going to be less important. So in looking out over at Baron's hand, he has the Royal Research. Do you think this is just going to come out as a radar, get a little bit deeper into his deck, try to find those Lend-Leases to reach that critical massive draw? Or do you think he potentially goes later with this research as a form of value? He has the credit lead. He can try to get out either a Bletchley Park or go for the radar, I believe it's called, or sonar. Active sonar, that's the word. We got there eventually, to just increase the cost of kill switch. He says, I'm going for radar. I want card draw. Monty pickup, substantially less useful this game than the previous game.
I for sure thought he would as well go with the radar. It just makes, I think, the most sense. He's got to get into his resources, and the slower that happens, I think the more of a chance he has to lose. So I agree with the call, and I think that astutely it was the right one. This is interesting here. Hedo Yakov. How many deployment effects do you think are in Baron's deck? Is it 0?
It is 0. He has 1 unit, I believe, and it is the passive effect of the 6th Pioneer. So Baron just says, you know what? I'm putting 3 to the face. It's where this card's going eventually. I have nothing else to do this turn. He could cycle with Monty, but it's not doing a ton. The 845th is picked up, but if I recall correctly, Killswitch is not playing any hammers, so there's not going to be any easy way for him to destroy this with damage. He can attack in the colonies for it, and that's going to be a bit of healing coming through. That's going to work out to be, 8 healing? That's a non-insignificant amount of healing, but he's going to need a lot more than 8 healing this game to stay alive once the armaments start coming out. And I would like to see Baron just go for the fortification. Keep that air power around in case there's a KV.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes the most sense. It would be really interesting. It's a card that isn't, played much. It's seen like maybe some brief spikes in popularity inside the meta. But just imagine if Killswitch was splashing the Soviet unit that only lets you play 1 order per turn.
The 60th Cavalry Regiment. I mean, we saw that come out.
Putting that out.
Innocent Bubbles' self-damage list yesterday, and I mean, it was okay. I definitely think, and the Monty into Lend-Lease again, he can't keep getting away with it, and they're Lend-Lease convoy shelling.
We're back, baby.
And it's gonna be a long game, but unless Baron gets really remarkably unlucky with his armaments just being shuffled onto the top of his deck to reduce his total damage output, I think this is likely headed to a Game 7, although it might take another, 15 turns to get there. Bloody Sickle on the 845th, so he doesn't actually take any damage, and he finds the first rifles. This is the first card that's actually going to put out any serious threat to Baron's HQ total.
Eventually, maybe.
Shelling does give Killswitch 1 healing, but far more importantly, it denies another piece of another credit slot, and that's just brutal. I know the feeling of playing against credit destruction as a Soviet player. I feel like Soviets needs credits more than any other nation. You don't have the silly credit cheats that other decks have, and most of your powerful cards come out later in the game, turns 5, 6, 7, 8. So being stuck on turns 4, which is like by far your worst feeling turns, doesn't feel great. This 39th could steal a Pioneer, in theory, if a Pioneer were to ever reach the board, but not with this Petliakov sticking around. So I'd love to see 39th just come out as a 5/5 you can push into the front line on the next turn.
Yeah, he could really use the big body for sure. Also interesting, right, is the way that the armaments is sort of working, it makes that 5-year plan very scary to play as well. And probably never going to have a chance to draw 5 into his hand anyway. So that shaping up as a dead card for a long time. The lion also dead card. Would
Yeah,
hate to
this,
see him draw another lion, or he's gonna really start to have a lot of unplayable hand space.
and he goes for the red banner immediately and gets a 5/5 blitzer, but that's going to immediately eat a firewall. And I would have loved to see him wait on that, just wait a little bit longer on that red dawn. Not red dawn, red banner. We're playing too much
Right.
push lately. Because if he had just played 39th, on the following turn pushed 39th, Baron plays the firewall, and then he plays the red banner, gets a 7 drop, and removes the firewall effect. That frees open another spot in the front line. Now, of course, we see Baron has double firewall, so it wouldn't have really accomplished anything in the end, but this just slows him down, because now the 39th is even slower to get going. It does give him the extra body from the second rifles coming out of the first rifles, though, and a zero-cost Corson is going to mean Killswitch is going to start building quite the board. I suspect we will see the 39th and the Corson come out and the first rifles push up.
And it'll be really funny to see how big this 6/6 gets, because it's not doing anything. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be generating +1/+1
Yeah, we'll be able to track what
on a
turn it
long
is
game.
based on the stats of the this inventory. I don't even remember the name of this card. It's been a
Same.
while.
we both tried to slyly describe it without its name.
I'm sure everyone in chat right now knows exactly what this card is called and is flaming us for
Yeah.
it. But here we see Killswitch thinking. I believe Lion for a Day can target friendly units. There's a lot of orders that can, there's a lot of orders that can't. I believe Lion for a Day, because it's orange, it shows it's active. It can target this 6/6, free up a spot in the front line, and heal damage. But does he do it this turn? At this point, he shouldn't feel like there's any threat of immediately dying. There's also the Winter Warfare to clear up another spot. He keeps the 39th back, and I think he's keeping it back because he's thinking, one, I'm dealing damage to the opponent with the Petlyakov attack, but two, I can steal the Pioneer Regiment, but he can't actually steal the Pioneer Regiment because of this Petlyakov.
Yeah, and also board space coming into play eventually for that interaction as well.
So he's healed back to full health, and at this point, there's only really 2 more healing immediately in his hand, and the ATS pickup from Baron is going to mean that when these armaments and the Sea Patrols coming out, it's going to give him additional card draw, although, I mean, he has no shortage of card draw in his hand. And in fact, there's so much card draw that he can't play a convoy. If he goes Fortification Convoy and doesn't hit a 1-drop, he will overdraw. So he might just have to do double Fortification or
Double
Fortification. ATS goes Fortification Escort Group, actually a much better play, get the armaments starting to tick in your deck. And for those who don't know how the Escort Group armaments works, because it's certainly not a card that we see often, and the Hammer pickup, he does run Hammer, but he just killed the 845th the previous turn. Oh, that is 6 healing he's missing out on there. Absolutely brutal.
Is there a second one in the deck list?
I will check this Soviet deck list. That's his only hammer. There is one other copy of 845th. And he drops the hammer already on the Bryansk, freeing up more spot in the front line. But again, this Corson's going to get firewalled.
Aaron with another armaments as well.
He could take out the Engineers as well. The Engineers isn't threatening that much damage, and Killswitch doesn't have that many more ways, necessarily. Oh, with the Daylight Bombing.
Daylight bombing as well.
And it looks like he's valuing getting the firewall out this turn. Does take out the Engineers. I really like this choice of taking out the Engineers. He's saying that this will likely heal more than 2 this game. Because even if Killswitch only manages to kill 1 more of his units, that is still going even with the gunshot mission. So they're just taking out the Engineers now. The 7th Alpini.
And the first Alpini coming into play.
Baron doesn't have any firewalls in hand.
Plenty of draw to find him, though. 2 left.
Yeah.
But he's got to get some space in his hand to be able to draw anything.
I would be shocked if killswitch does anything other than playing this 7th Alpini and putting 5 into Baron's face, because he does have to win this game eventually. Although realistically, he's not going to win on burn. He's going to win on out-healing Baron. At this health total, I think it's incredibly unlikely that Baron is going to die to board sooner than drawing his entire deck. But the question
We
is,
see him go ATSC Patrol here to synergize some draw, and hey, there's that Pioneer.
and we might see if killswitch mistakenly goes for the 39th, if that was his plan this whole time. If the Pioneer Company comes out, it doesn't need to come out this turn because it's not actually going to get him any credits. It does free up room in his hand. And with that armaments being enhanced so quickly, I imagine that is a 4 damage armaments. I can actually check that in spectator mode. Or apparently I can't. So we can't, but I'm certain that that is a 4 damage armaments. So Taylor bombing into the Pelyakov. It's one of the few ways killswitch has of dealing damage from the support line, but it's also stopping some of killswitch's deployment effects, and he does have a couple of meaningful deployment effects. The second Pelyakov pickup is quite funny. And actually,
yeah, right back to it.
Looking at the deck lists, killswitch is probably really hoping to find those fiats, because the fiats offer continual healing and they act from the support line. So if they do get firewall, that's a very low value firewall target. But unfortunately, no fiats for him.
Any ability to do damage from the support line is a huge boon for playing into the firewall deck for sure.
Now, Baron has 8 damage in hand right now. So killswitch is functionally sitting on 9 health. And dealing that 9 extra damage is not easy without any more armaments in the deck. But here comes Lend-Lease number 2.
Another escort group, 2 firewalls, more draw, pretty much all the tools he needs. Sitting on another 4 damage from the 2 air powers that can go face as well.
Yep, here comes the firewall, and I suspect we're going to see the escort group shuffle in another armaments to get that ticking immediately.
Drawing into 2 firewalls right on the turn the Alpini gets into the front line to threaten the 4 healing is insane. Super, super important for Baron.
And I think Baron needs to not play this firewall. It's 3. You can afford to take 3 damage every single turn. You're at 35 health, and you have very few cards left in your deck. I can actually go and check that. He has 3 cards left in deck.
And this will be the 4th firewall, of course. All 4 units in the front line then at that point.
So if killswitch top decks a Fiat, if killswitch top decks a Fiat this turn, that is going to guarantee 2 healing every turn, but he doesn't. He finds another Lion for a day. And with Engineer gone, Lion for a days don't do anything other than free up spot in the front line, but that doesn't really matter. We'll likely see the ISU come out.
Kill 2 of the firewall units, and then of course be a
the
tank capable of dealing 6 damage.
Effect.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
But
probably just playing it for the big body. We talked about if killswitch would forget it, and I forgot it.
Now the question is, does Baron, because Baron does not have a way to get 8 damage armaments. He has 3 cards left in deck. I believe 1 is an escort group, so that's going to be 4 more damage. But that brings killswitch to 1. So one of the other 2 cards in his deck has to deal damage.
I know we've seen at least 2 sea patrols. Of course, Baron could just draw the win.
Oh, and the Commonwealth. I completely forgot the Commonwealth was in his deck. That's why he played Firewall, of course.
I've gotten a little used to having Brit players amass all that heal to not work around that Commonwealth. I did the same. He drew it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, Already just wins."
Yeah, I was like trying to find the deck list, see how
3 cards left
he's running, and of course Commonwealth. He was literally just waiting for Commonwealth the entire time. That's why killswitch was played much more aggressively, to try to get that HQ total down. I completely forgot about that. That card definitely single-handedly hinges that entire matchup on how both players play that.
Yeah, it's basically a Commonwealth deck, and we both.
Yeah, very, very silly. We're professional casters here. But with that,
Baron... Listen, it's been outlawed a long time.
Baron
the ecosystem moves.
Baron gets the third win, and that means we are headed to our second game 7. And I'd love to see that. I mean, you know, when you make a league format, and it's such a small group, you want it to be as competitive as possible. You don't want any individual player to be very clearly at a lower caliber than any of the others and just sort of fall behind. And seeing both our first two matches going to game 7s, I think it just highlights that these are very equally matched players, both in their play style, and their deck building skills. And yeah, it's anyone's game here. I mean, I think Killswitch clearly has the huge advantage just in terms of matchups, but if you're Baron, you are happy to at least have gotten 3 wins in here. But the US deck, absolutely, we saw it against the air deck. It's absolutely capable of winning on turn 4, and we saw the Soviet deck die on turn 4 to the Blitzkrieg deck. You know, if it just has a slightly slower hand, things can just get out of hand very, very quickly.
And of course, as we said, you know how much the restriction comes into play here. You can only have one deck with Blitzkrieg, and for Baron, that was the German deck that he was able to win with. The U.S. deck based around a Japan ally, but definitely does not have access to that kind of one-turn burst that you get from Blitzkrieg that can really just send the game on turn 4. You'll have to do it with a broader spectrum of units kind of going wider, more shallow cuts, but a lot more of them rather than, you know, big Blitzkrieg gash turns. And that's going to be really tough because obviously as the game goes on, the longer that game goes, the more it favors that control player and that big heavy deck. So I feel like we're going to know very quickly who's going to win this game. The game itself might take a lot longer, but the knowledge of who is clearly going to win could be present very quickly.
And before we get into that final game 7, let's draw a giveaway, and then after the set, once we find out who it is, we will do a big giveaway. So make sure you stick around for that. But for now, just a regular 150 gold giveaway, which is being won by Dubya96, DDUBYA96. Apologies if I butchered that name, but
W.
W. Oh, of course, W. I'm not American enough to
Yeah,
get this.
that's President. That's President W.
W96, of course. Um, but yeah, let's let the players know that they can head into Game 7. And, I mean, I'd ask you who you think is going to win, but I think very clearly there is a favorite, and with before seeing the hands, it would just be irresponsible to say Baron um, is likely to win this, but
Team heavy plot armor. We're in it.
alrighty, we have one of the spectator modes is cooperating, and there we go for both of them. So here we are going into the finals. We see Killswitch going first, and that's the type of hand you want. The Winter Warfare to stop any nonsense with bicycle regiments, defeat it for turn 2. The Road for Berlin, it says healing on it, and it costs 1, so it's very tempting to keep, but it's not easy to deal 3 damage to an aggressive
Especially when
deck
you're
early in the
starting with
game.
that 2 damage fiat.
Yeah, I mean, there's a world where he can do turn 1 Road to Berlin, turn 2 Fiat, turn 3 attack face Winter Warfare if it's going to be killing some 1 health units. So he could potentially go for that, and he decides to keep it, and the fourth card is a Bryansk Regiment. At this point, Killswitch needs to play for value, needs to win with these Shermans and the 5th Rangers going later into the game. And yeah, looks like he has a slower hand. It's going to be this Red Devils coming out most likely on turn 2. And if Petlyakov gets picked up by Killswitch, this game is over. It's worth mentioning Killswitch has 2 Petlyakovs. We saw them last game.
Yeah. Huge reason why this is such a bad matchup that we haven't even sort of addressed yet.
Although the Duress in Baron's hand, it is not a deployment effect. It is not, it's not the M10. This will be able to shut down a Petlyakov. So the question is, does he have to think about that? Does he have to keep this Duress in
He has
hand?
to save it. In my opinion, yes, he has to. He has to be cognizant of that, and he has to be saving it for the first. You can't imagine that, you know, you're not going to see at least one, and it only takes one to completely brick like everything that you're trying to do, all the synergies that are in your deck.
Yeah. And when Baron sees the sickle into Fiat rather than a Petlyakov come out, he's probably he's probably like sitting down, getting ready, hunching over to get into this game because this is going to be a game. This is going to be a long game. This isn't going to be a turn four win for Baron, and this isn't going to be a turn four get shut out for Baron or for Killswitch.
Oh,
But
and he's taking the tempo now. He's saying that I it, I can win before you find the pedals, but he could just if he top techs a pedal, Baron is gonna feel bad. This is gonna be a bad time. He's gonna feel bad.
this is shutting down the guard, so he might be doing this
It's
because
certainly not useless. That's true.
yeah, if we look, Killswitch isn't running it's the things that have been run in the past, like the Bologna regiments. He has these Briosks, and then after that, it's coming down on turn 5. So this is going to give Killswitch an opportunity to either go for the Sherman, but much more likely, I suspect, that we will see several units thrown into the front line at once to just try to rack up this damage, win the game before these 7th Alpinis come out. Um, Although maybe he wants to try to pick up a half track before one of these 7th Alpinis come out. He will have one turn where next turn he can go for the tempo, and then on the following turn he can play Sherman, and then the 7th Alpini is going to be coming out on turn 6, 100%.
Yeah, Baron truly wishing that he had those Devil's Brigades rocking in this deck this time, but he does not.
Yep, unfortunately, that's just
No real solutions to the Alpinis.
Yeah, there is 2 half tracks, one M10, but and there's the half track pickup. Man, this game we said that Baron would have to try to win very early, but it's looking like this is the type of hand that is just sort of the slow, steady buildup of a board, the pressure that can knock Soviet control out of the game. The second Fiat coming down is kind of annoying for Baron, but if he can leave all of his units at 3 attack or more, he can just ignore this.
Yeah, moving up into the front line with his engineers is going to say, might want to put that second engineer
Yep.
down. You can see him shaking it in frustration. But I don't know that it's going to matter too much. Obviously, if a 4-2 and a 3-2 are both dying to that Fiat. If anything, it might. Or no, I'm sorry. The Fiat does damage based off its own attack, so not relevant. But
And we might just. Do you think he goes all in? Um, he's seen a sickle, and there's been no follow up since then. He knows Killswitch runs 2 Winter Warfares, but does he go Combat Engineers push Type 93? I mean, I guess he wouldn't be able to attack face with that play, so he's just going to do this play. And I think for sure we will see the Winter Warfare attack with Fiat, take out the Red Devils, take out the Combat Engineers. And the strategic focus pickup means that Baron has 2 more turns to try to piece together a win, or at the very least piece together a hand big enough to build a board following the strategic focus.
and as you said, right, the Sherman looming is like something that he absolutely has to pull off for his draw, but is a relatively slow tempo play when he needs to be considering his speed and the timing of the game as well. So truly a crossroads here.
One thing that's worth noting, a potential out for Baron in this game, if he can't just win off a very aggressive board early, is the fact that he has these 5th Rangers that later in the game can come down as 8/8s, and Killswitch's deck runs very little card draw. This is sort of the struggle of playing a Soviet control deck, is you have the Bloody Sickles, they replace themselves, and in his deck, Killswitch is running a single 5-year plan, which, if he can find, will give him a hand for the rest of the game. But until then, he is sort of reliant on just simply the cards he draws each turn. Now, the individual value of all of these cards is incredibly powerful, but an 8/8 is an 8/8, and Killswitch doesn't have that many ways to answer them, and we might be seeing potentially a line for a day coming out earlier than when an 8/8 5th Rangers comes out on one of these Shermans. Likely this turn will be the 7th Alpini, which will walk into the half track, and then we'll see the strategic focus on the following turn to fully clear the board. And there's that 5th Rangers pickup.
Yeah, unfortunately, 1 credit short of getting to attack with the Sherman, so he's probably just going to take his 5 damage. Could maybe take 7 damage if he wanted to donate the type into the situation as well, but Baron hopefully cognizant of all the AoE options at Killswitch's disposal.
And so long as Baron doesn't commit this 164th, the strategic focus will come out, and Baron will just immediately rebuild another board with another Sherman. and hopefully find another answer to this 7th Alpini.
All right, yeah, just taking the damage. And as we said, the board is doomed, but not donating too much into it. Can very clearly just go right back to the front line, right back to drawing, right back to having a second Sherman and a fifth Ranger.
See our players exchanging emotes, all in good fun, picking up the 4th Sherman. Baron will be able to stay in this game. The question is he going to be able to end this game? Because just looking at Killswitch's hand, 7th Alpini, he might be scared to play it though, because if another half track comes out, you're staring down a lot of damage.
Yeah, and you're just staring down basically 2 full turns of tempo loss.
Half track type
12
93.
credits of tempo loss.
Half track type 93 would be a 2-card just lethal combination for Baron. Now, obviously, we see Baron's hand. It's not there at all. But if you kill switch, do you simply make a play that you know dies to 2 cards you know are in your opponent's deck? And that half track could also be a M10. Oh, there's the production order getting picked up. We spoke about that at the beginning, going over deck lists. That's a single one-of production order, and it's going to come down here as a B24J to suppress
exactly
both
enough
units,
credits.
deny the healing, push 3 to face, and develop a 6/5 heavy armor bomber that just Soviet control is just simply not equipped to deal with. And like, if Killswitch was running Depths of Winter, obviously Depths of Winter would be a massive out here, but that's not a card in his deck. Naval engagement can take out the units in the support line. It's certainly not like he is staring down just immediate death, but his hand's not looking good.
Yeah, an incredible splash from Baron. Huge dividends as soon as he draws it.
Killswitch can clear the entire board and take the front line with an 845th here, with Winter Warfare, Lion for a Day, Hammer. That will deny that will deny the Sherman draw immediately. Actually, it won't even deny the Sherman draw. Pathfinders, to take out the 845th, will then be able to gain Blitz and push forward. And of course, the 845th is suppressed as well as the Alpini, so there's no healing here. And Killswitch will be down to 2 cards in hand, the KV and the top deck.
And basically still has to do exactly that. TK early, gonna jam that in his face real quick as well.
Yeah, and I will be shocked if Baron does anything other than Pathfinder's push, Sherman, and then most likely Type 94 face with the remaining credit there. Pathfinders is coming out, and pushing the Pathfinders, it's a powerful enough card that Killswitch has to kill it, because his units are incredibly expensive. You can't eat that temper loss, but you would also just love for it to bounce to 7th LP to get it unsuppressed, but unfortunately that will likely not happen.
Probably why Baron is being so cautious with the play as well, really considering sort of what he's doing. Draws a Hellcat in 99th.
And based on Killswitch's draws, this game might just be over here. 5-year plan is not the card you want to see in this situation. If he had 12 health, 20 health, absolutely. Maybe even 10 health. There are some outs there with some Bryansks. But 6 health. Do you just have to go for it and hope you hit Engineer's double Bryansk? We see one Bryansk.
I think you do, and he doesn't know, of course, that he's completely dead to hand from Baron's blitzers, even if he wasn't for the Sherman. So, but yeah, I really don't think he had a choice here.
Yeah, and we will see most likely this Bryansk and then either the 845th or the Fiat. Oh, he can't even play them because he has to kill this Pathfinders. He can't afford to play the Sickle or he will die, so the Sherman and the Type 94 will go
and
into the
Baron
Bryansk
just
or
draws
the M10
the
top
M10.
deck. Really his own choice, Baron's choice. He has 3 different cards that kill his opponent in this situation. Baron just trying to decide which to go for. He finds it, and Baron actually comes back, beats the Soviet deck twice in a row, 3 times overall. Killswitch lost with the Soviet deck in 3 of his 4 losses, but that is going to be Baron taking this series, a bit of a comeback, winning with some very, very strange decks we're not necessarily used to seeing, but definitely decks that Baron is used to playing. Wow.
Yeah, congrats to Baron. Really incredible set. Really awesome to see him be able to claw back. You do feel for killswitch. He drew into probably the top third of his deck without finding a Pedal Yakov. Um, Either of the two Pedal Yakovs in the top third of his deck probably make that game completely different. And uh, there's just so many different twists and turns that a first to four out of seven, you know, so many machinations of all the different things that which deck gets selected when, which deck matches up against what goes against what. Certainly, there were ways here for Killswitch to find a win here today as well. But super impressive by Baron to be down multiple times in that set and claw his way back.
Yeah, I mean, Killswitch basically had a lead until the very end. Went up 1-0, 1-1, went up 2-1, and then 2-2, went up 3-2, and then lost twice in a row at the end there. Absolutely amazing play from both players. Really creative deck lists, and both players just playing the decks that they love to play, and that's really something I like to see. It's not just simply being meta slaves. Obviously, Killswitch's decks are a bit more meta, but Killswitch loves playing the meta, and that's just how he enjoys to play this game. And here, if we look at the updated scoreboard, we see Baron Von Glower, Innocent Bubbles tied for first, Birdo Burrito, Killswitch tied down there at the bottom. But the important metric here is the first number score, and the score is determined by game wins subtracted by game losses, and then plus match wins. So the match win gets you one extra bonus there. So Baron and Innocent Bubbles are on a score of 2, with Birdo and Killswitch on a score of -1, and those can turn around very quickly. If somebody gets a 4-0, that will have a huge impact on the standings, and if simply the players who lost 4-3 win 4-3 on the next day in against their next opponents in week 2, then we could theoretically see a completely tied leaderboard going into the final week. But who's to say what that? We'll have to wait until next week to see how that turns out. But I have to say, we're a week into this. We've seen 2 matches from our 4 players here, and I'm incredibly excited. I mean, I don't think we could have asked for a better week 1. Game 7, going down like crazy top decks, crazy plays, just amazing highlights all around. And yeah, big round of applause to the players. Big round of applause to you, Thanatron, for joining me as the special guest caster for this tournament. I hope you enjoyed. I know it was definitely a great help for me. And, it's always fun to cast off of somebody. You're an amazing caster. Always fun to hang out with.
Appreciate it.
And we will do one final giveaway. We'll do a third big giveaway here, or a second big giveaway, sorry. So 300 gold, exclamation mark giveaway. Enter in the chat. Thank you everybody for watching this series. Again, if you've won the giveaway, I will send it to you later tonight, possibly tomorrow morning. We'll see, but you will be getting it soon in the form of a code in Twitch Whispers. So make sure your Twitch Whispers are on so I can send you the prize. And yeah, that will be time to draw the entrant, and the winner of the next 300 gold is BPSF Tom. So BPSF_Tom, you have won 300 gold. You will be getting that at some point in the next 24 hours. But yeah, that is it from me. Do you have anything to add, Thanatron?
No, definitely happy to be here. Appreciate the invite. We love community tournaments. We love side tournaments. So thank you for putting one on. It's always great to see them. We definitely don't have enough of them. So, and yeah, just incredible play. You love to see a tied table. Moving out of Classic now, is that correct?
Yes. Well, partially.
So that's also very, very interesting. Really cool event here is we're going to have a lot of ebbs and flows and format changes, right? So really, really cool, and happy to see what our creativity driven players come up with next week.
Yeah, week 2 will be Pauper, but it's going to be Classic Pauper with the same deck restrictions on the duplicate cards. And I think out of all of the game modes, I think this is going to best apply to Pauper, because we've seen Pauper tournaments in the past where it's just simply Shermans and Californias and Monsoon Rots in every single deck. They all look the same. This format is going to be really fun. People are going to have to get very creative with their Pauper, and of course Classic is going to add more cards to that pool. But yeah, before we head out, I'm going to ask you this. With hopefully this is going to turn into a tradition, asking all of the guest casters, who do you have winning this tournament? I know it's
Baron Von Glower.
Okay, your boy Van Von Glow, he is
Yeah,
currently
right
top
about
on the leaderboards. Well, of course, he is tied with Innocent Bubbles, but you know,
tiebreak goes to alphabetical order.
well, no tiebreakers will be head to head. But the mysteries of tiebreakers forever will elude us. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Thank you for the players for spending your evening playing these games. They're both European, so I'm sure they're both getting ready to go to bed now. And yeah, we will end it here. If you missed the stream or you missed parts of the stream, you can check Twitch VODs or you can go to my YouTube channel. Where I will be uploading it likely sometime tomorrow morning. And join my Discord. Link is in the Twitch details to stay updated for this tournament. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you in the next one.